Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ed Greer.
And I'm Ron Swallow.
And I am producer Bill. And today we're going to look at a very visual aspect of comic books. And for that reason, we encourage you, if you haven't yet, go find our YouTube page. It's The Greatest Pod on YouTube and watch this podcast. If you're not going to watch it, we're still going to try to make this a great audio experience, but we are going to be looking at a bunch of pictures because today we are talking about the greatest costume designs we think, across pop culture, but let's be honest, this is mostly comics and some cartoons.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't be addressing a lot of movie costumes, nor their shortcomings, really. So that's why and it's really more about the iconic line, the iconic design, the sort of iconic silhouette. Say iconic one more time, motherfucker. But yeah, the silhouette, that thing that makes it different than any other thing at a glance. That's what this stuff is about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think comics really invented that sort of at a glance iconography, with respect to classic cartoonists, from Disney and Warner Brothers. But the thing about iconic comic book costumes has always been, oh, this looks like nothing else anybody else wears. And like, even in silhouette, I can tell who this is. So for that reason, we thought it prudent to be looking at the source material for so many of our great movies and TV shows, which is comic books. And maybe let's just jump right into it, guys. One of the big touchstones, and also I would say an inspiration for many subsequent costumes, is of course the Amazing Spider-Man. There he is, created by the great Steve Ditko, famously after Jack Kirby tried his hand at a version of Spider-Man, because at that time, all Stan Lee would do would be to give the artist a name, Spider-Man, and let the artist essentially create the character. Jack Kirby came up with something that was way more of like a dude with a gun that shot webs. And Steve Ditko then came in and created sort of the creepy wall crawler that we all know and love. So, guys, thoughts on Spider-Man?
Well, the interesting thing about this, the pictures that we're looking at right now, I think I might have selected this one or put it in the thing. There's something, I think they're both John Romita Jr. Oh. And I think it's from different eras of his life. Like when he was very first starting to get Marvel work, it was the stuff that's on the left. The sort of he's sort of chunky. It's not. He is more round. He's round. He gets more angular to the right. As John Romita Jr. ages, his designs get more angular. I think you can see that kind of.
And it's obviously Ditko inspired, though.
Oh yeah, of course, the original costume. It's a rendition of the original costume.
Yeah, the version on the left looks more like his father's work, which was really status quo for Spider-Man for a really long time, John Romita Sr. Yeah. It was really the Marvel house style, because John Romita Sr. really laid down, what that Silver Age Spider-Man would become. And then, you had guys like Ross Andru or John Buscema, these guys who came afterward were really just sort of copying what he was doing. And it wasn't really until the 90s that we started to see some real stylistic breaks with Spider-Man. But talking about the costume in general, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. And I think one of the first things to talk about is those eyes. And those have been a consistent source of experimentation for comic book artists throughout the years. And there's something so intriguing and so simple, it almost feels dumb, but like it just works, about taking the classic comic book white eyes that you would see on everybody from Batman to Green Arrow to Green Lantern, and just making them a little bigger, a little bit more, bigger than is comfortable for a human face.
Yeah, a little buggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also just makes him expressive without a mouth. You know what I'm saying? Without a real mouth, he can still be expressive with the eyes. So yeah, it can be stretched and pushed. When Todd McFarlane starts drawing it, the eyes get super big, but it's still the same design. It's still it's letting it sing, but just through this voice.
Yeah, and looking at a Todd McFarlane image here, I think one of the things that you really notice between the John Romita Jr. to the Todd McFarlane is look at the amount of webbing on that costume. If you look back at the old Silver Age model, it's a very, it's not cluttered. It's there. It's not cluttered. Todd McFarlane comes in and suddenly there are so many webs on this costume that, it feels tedious to look at, let alone to draw. And yet it still remains unmistakably Spider-Man. And I think part of that is because just the choice to put that web design across so much of the costume is kind of a weird choice. Like you're giving yourself so much work to do as an artist. And it is almost, antithetical to the idea of creating something iconographic, creating something that you see at a glance and you know exactly what it is. There's so much detail in this costume, and yet it doesn't overwhelm, which I think is really a feat.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you have to think about it, Spider-Man having to sew this, like that's a lot of black thread he's sewing into that.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's telling that like in all the movie adaptations we've seen, they never go as crazy as the Todd McFarlane version.
No, absolutely not.
Well, also, just like when you look at the basics of the design, like red boots, red gloves, there's a seam of red that goes up the side of the arm. Just real chunks of color, sort of a belt that's made of a red area around his middle. There's just something really inspired about how he broke up the sections. It's like only thing I can note as something as fresh as this is like Dave Cockrum's designs for like what would become the X-Men's costumes for almost ever. You know what I'm saying? Some of those designs were just like, this is just bold, good stuff right off the bat. Like Steve Ditko, man.
I mean, I would also say he's doing a lot of stuff here that no comics were doing at the time. Like he removed the trunks. And even if you look at Kirby's designs for the Fantastic Four, which were kind of contemporaneous with the Ditko design for Spider-Man, they still got trunks on there. And the belts are real belts with like buckles that they're putting on over their clothes. Spider-Man has the iconography of a belt, but that's not what that is. And so there's just some stuff that at the time was a real radical departure for a superhero.
Yeah, well, but at the same time, it really does make you think of a spider. So doing it that way really sells what it is pretty quickly. And yeah, you could just do red with a spider on the thing, but that choice to put the webbing in there just makes it very clear that this is a spider who this is a Spider-Man who also has webs involved in his life. I think is one of those things. I know that sounds weird, but it's that's an important part of it, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like he's caught in the costume. If you think about it, it's like there's a net around him.
Yes, a net of responsibility.
That's
it. Well, even when you look at some of the basics of the costume, though, as you look at some of the other versions of Spider-Man, where you just sort of stretch the iconography a little bit, like different color schemes, different ways to like depict his like powers. I love the triangle feet era. You know what I'm saying?
Let me say, as a person who has a hard time drawing feet, I love the triangle feet era too.
Well, I mean, and granted, the triangle feet was very much of its time, but I think it works for Spider-Man in a way because this is a character where it's almost like the more inhuman you push him, the better it works.
Yep.
And again, even that, just the fact that you're creating a character whose movements can be so indicative of the character. Because if you think about the silhouette, like it is essentially just a naked, hairless human body in silhouette. But, and this was established as far back as Ditko, what makes it immediately recognizable is that he contorts himself into these weird positions that no other character is getting into. And that makes him Spider-Man. And I think if you look at the image we've got on screen right here, both this image of him hanging upside down from the web and this image from behind showcase that this sort of like coiled, hunched Spider-Man could only be Spider-Man. Like, who else is that going to be?
Yeah. He could dress him up in almost any costume and he would still be Spider-Man. So just when you really render the costume and you draw him that way, that's why Todd McFarlane was a star, man. Yeah. But like I was saying, the malleability of the costume, the malleability of the concept even of Spider-Man. You could do when they did. I'm so glad people like the design of Spider-Man 2099 because I thought all of those comics were going to go away forever. I thought they were gone forever and nobody was even going to remember. And now people like really like in the movie version of the costume. Like, yeah, this was him in the comics as rendered by Rick Leonardi. And it was just like, it was almost like Spider-Man meets the Punisher, but not quite, because he was still Spider-Man, but he's got like sort of a cape made of webs. It was really edgy, guys. And the little spikes, the little Batman spikes and the spikes on his hands to grab stuff.
I remember, because I was a kid, like this was my peak comic reading time when all this stuff was coming out, and most of the 2099 versions of the characters were essentially the main universe characters with more spikes and stuff. But like they weren't super dissimilar from, their, call it the parent design. This Spider-Man 2099 design was so off-putting to me when I was a kid because I was like, why's he got a skull on his chest? Like, how does he see? Those aren't eyes. Like, what is this? But as an older person who can appreciate design, it is wild how they are really keeping the bones of the Spider-Man design, but pushing it in a completely weird new way.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, Spider-Man could be reinterpreted so many ways. They found that out. They found that out.
Well, and I think we'll get into a couple more Spider-Man designs here, but it's worth pointing out that one of the other sort of rule-breaking things about the Spider-Man design was the fact that he wears a full face mask. Like, you have no idea what's going on under that mask. And up to that point, I mean, who else could you really say that about? Maybe Dr. Fate from the old Golden Age days.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it was a real rule breaker.
Yeah. And also then you don't have to draw a nose. That's pretty dope.
It is a bit of a shorthand. But
you guys ever try to draw a nose? I mean, come on.
I have drawn many noses.
That's because you're a very good artist. Okay. God damn it. And
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So we talked Spider-Man. Now I want to talk about the clone of Spider-Man. I am, of course, on record of being a big fan of Ben Reilly, the Spider clone. But listen, there is really something to be said for this Scarlet Spider design. Okay.
I mean, especially in history. It's a time in history when it's perfect for what it is.
Yeah, but I also really appreciate the fact that it literally takes the Spider-Man aesthetic, inverts it, right, color-wise, and just the way that like the fields of color play on the costume, and then strips it down into this really sort of like homemade, jerry-rigged aesthetic. And like, I love the fact that he's essentially just wearing a ripped hoodie, and he's got his web shooters on the outside. All the stuff that Spider-Man keeps hidden under that sleek Steve Ditko costume, this dude's just hanging out for everybody to see. And to me, there's something about that makes him feel even more like a little bit of an underdog. And it harkens back to that idea of like, no, Spider-Man's just a kid who made his own costume, which was never that believable with the Spider-Man design as done by Steve Ditko.
Of course. Now, a couple of questions. From this picture specifically, where do you think he got this pizza from? Where in Brooklyn? I think that's very important. Can you go back
Queens?
Queens. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, perfect. What are in those pouches on his foot, his ankle pouches?
Okay, so can I tell you?
Because I don't remember.
Well, one of the things that they established with Scarlet Spider was that he had Peter Parker's web shooters, but he enhanced it. So he also carried around what he called impact webbing, which were these little spheres of compact webbing that would like explode into a giant net. And he had stingers, which were like poison tipped darts that he could shoot out that could help incapacitate somebody. So I just assume he's got some of those in those little ankle.
Yeah. And he could just put them in the wrist thing real quick when he needs them.
Yeah, they're refills. It's just extra. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, it could just be even more web fluid, just if he needs to make sure he doesn't run out.
Yeah. Yeah. Who drew this?
Well, this is the great Tom Lyle. The RIP. But Tom Lyle, I believe, I know that they had a couple of the Spider-Man artists at the time take cracks at the Scarlet Spider design. I want to say Mark Bagley did a bunch of work on it, but the Scarlet Spider's very first appearance in comics was drawn by Tom Lyle, and very much an artist of his time. But I don't know, I thought it kicked ass. And I will say this hoodie look also presages another Spider-Man variant that we're about to take a look at. But before we move on, Ed, any thoughts on Scarlet Spider?
My thing with all of the extra Spider guys were like, it was just Marvel trying to like make Spider-Man over kind of and see if they could like get another Spider-Man and like see if they could update him or whatever, see if they could give him an edge, you know, and in that way, I think they absolutely succeeded because the DIY aesthetic of his stuff. I've been a web shooters outside the thing forever. I think I might have got addicted to it with like I saw those old ass tapes at the original comic book conventions where they would show you that shitty Spider-Man show where he like shot out yarn and shit.
Yeah.
And like their conception of the web shooters was actually one of the only cool things about the shit. He had these kind of bulky web shooters around his wrist so you could like see very clearly where the webs came from and shit like that. And it kind of sold it. So like when this design came back around, I was like, hoodie, web shooters on the outside. I would have maybe picked something besides like super this red. You know what I'm saying? Like I there's some little things that probably I would have did something more like what they've done with Spider-Gwen or Miles or something. But this right here paves the way to that type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and now that you've mentioned it, let's take a look at the Amazing Spider-Gwen. I will go on record. I think this is the greatest sort of variant take on the Spider-Man costume that they have done to date. There's something so simple but also complex. The way that they weave that pink web pattern in both on her outfit, but then also on the inside of her hoodie. I think that's an amazing design. And even the way that they rim those eyes, not with like a hard black line, but with that, kind of soft spray painted look. It's just amazing. And even up down to the ballet shoes, and that sort of being a real indication of like where she comes from with her movement, which is very different than Peter Parker. I think this is just a home run.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the way that the purple webbing sort of jazz snakes through the costume, appearing and disappearing and all the fresh places. And on the inside of the hoodie is a great touch.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just really a great touch. And the ballet shoes, I like the ballet shoes or the Chucks, but I like her, for some reason, her shoes being sort of a turquoise and the rest of her stuff being sort of purple and white. There's something fresh about that even. Like, it's like she's a rebel. She's not matchy. She wears what she wants to wear.
Yeah. I will also say, I think one of the great indicators of a good costume design is if the toys look kick-ass. And I would say both the Scarlet Spider and this Spider-Gwen toy that we're looking at here, like those are toys that you want to play with. Like those are kick-ass looking toys. And that I think is a good indicator for, if the design is working.
Yep.
All right. 100%. So now that we've talked about a Marvel arachnid hero, let's bring up, and maybe this is not one that you were expecting us to get into, but let's bring up a DC arachnid hero, and that is the most modern conception of the Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
Dun-dun.
Ron, what do you like about this?
What I super like about this is that it looks so alien, and it looks kind of scary, but I also just love when you put blue and black together, like as far as a color aesthetic goes together. I know that's very super simple, but like, and the design in it is it does look like a bug, but it also feels like it's from a different planet. Like it's otherworldly. So it's kind of scary going up against something like that in my mind. Like if I'm a villain and I see that coming at me, I'm going, okay, well, I got to think about this a little bit.
The thing I really like about this, and you'll see it come up with some other ones that I've thrown into our picks here, is this is a great take on armor. And specifically, I think the face mask is a really great take on the idea of a helmet. And I think that like not enough superhero costumes really push the idea of what the face mask is or could be. But I think that this is a great example of a face mask that certainly has precedence. Like, it's not like they're reinventing the wheel, but it's like they're combining Spawn eyes with Spider-Man oversized eye holes with the Batman Beyond, like, you can see my mouth even though I'm wearing a mask, with sort of almost a Power Rangers helmet aesthetic. And you smash all that together and you get something that ends up looking very unique.
Yeah, and a tiny bit of Iron Man.
Yeah, well, my favorite shit is the scarab design, because it's like in every design, every time somebody draws it, you have to very clearly see that the scarab is attached to him. It's grabbing him. It's 3 legs, that one down by his hips, one on his rib cage, and one over his shoulders. They're grabbing him and holding on to him, and his 2 like swords over his shoulders are basically its mandibles. You know what I'm saying? It's like that shit really gets across that this motherfucker is a beetle. You are a beetle. You know what I mean?
Well, and pointing out those mandibles that kind of come up over his shoulders, I think that's another great choice to just create a really unique silhouette, as we're going to keep talking about, but also keeping it grounded in like, okay, that's not just sort of for the sake of being cool decoration. Like, they've worked it into the scarab, which is the source of his powers, which is the alienness that Ron is talking about, because it comes from another planet. And so, yeah, it's going to be on display, but it also just makes it a really, really unique outline for this character.
Yeah, 100%. Now, let me ask you guys something, both as artists who have designed their own characters. When you're doing this sort of thing, that is kind of some of the stuff you think about, right?
Completely. I mean, the whole idea of the unique silhouette, I think, comes from like Tex Avery, who was one of the original Warner Brothers animators, that like you should be able to look at a character, just the outline filled in all black, and immediately recognize that character. And if you think about any of those Warner Brothers characters, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Foghorn Leghorn, all those characters follow that rule to a T. And I think where it gets almost simplified in comics language is like, look, we know that pretty much every character is going to essentially have a muscular, idealized human body. So what do you do within that to make it very, very unique? And so, early guys almost got not a pass, but like they had a little bit easier, because like when they created Batman, just the ears and the scalloped cape was all you needed, man. And that immediately creates a unique silhouette. With something like this, there have been a lot of different silhouettes created in the intervening years. So you're going a little bit more outside the box. But when you go more outside the box, you have to justify it in some way. It can't just be like, throw some fins on his shoulders because no other character looks like that. That's fine. Really good design incorporates it into the character's backstory.
Well, what did he look like before?
Well,
like the one right before this one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the one from like the JLA Europe and stuff, and
it's the original jazz. It's the original Charlton design of like Blue
Ted
Beetle. Ted Cord, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, look, this is a fantastic drawing, and it is a dumbass costume.
I will say this for the Ted Cord Blue Beetle.
I like the torso of it.
Agreed.
I think
I love the skirt. The skirt is great.
Those are trunks.
Those are you son of a bitch, you with this slander. I'm not
like skirts.
Yeah, well, shut up. So yeah, I just think his torso is great. I think the torso design is really cool.
And you do see a beetle in there too. It is a nicely,
I've always loved the juxtaposition of dark blue and light blue. You don't see a lot of superheroes with that sort of monochrome color palette.
Yeah.
And I think this really works, especially using like the thick black line as the line of demarcation between the two. It's a very graphic look. Again, there's some weird things here. The whole lower body is very just stock superhero. Throw them in some trunks and some, just below the knee boots. Again, the gloves, same thing. But yeah, I'm with Ed. Like from the shoulders to the navel, there's some cool stuff going on in this costume. And the mask is pretty cool, despite being pretty traditional in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but if you're talking about that thing you mentioned with Tex Avery, of the silhouette, that could be it. Literally anybody.
I mean, that could be Spider-Man for all you know.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
true.
And I think
That's true.
that's what changes it from not being quite as cool as the new version. It is still great though. Like you are right. It is still really interesting. I like the goggles look to it as well.
Well, and you can see the inspiration that they take going from this version, the Ted Kord version, to this version, the Jaime Reyes version. Like a lot of that same iconography, the thick black line helping to give you your symbol. Even the helmet has some of the same designs to it with, you know, goggle like eyes, but they're a little bit different. So, you know, they preserve enough while updating it in all the ways that we've talked about.
Yep.
Nice. 100%. Yeah, that's a good new school, and I wouldn't have brought that up, but looking at it, it deserves it. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a couple weird, more obscure DC ones in here that I'm excited to get to. But since we're seeing them here in the lower right, and since we've already brought them up, we might as well go to one of the all-time greats, and that, my friends, is of course Batman.
Batman. Well, and see, these are the I think Jose Luis Garcia Lopez turnarounds for like all sorts of bat stuff and toys and different stuff. Just like this is what he looks like, period. Use it for all the different areas of the corporation, but this is what he looks like. So being able to be able to draw so damn good that they trust you to do that is amazing. You can see that he has a mastery of human form. He's got delts.
It's a good ass.
I'm looking at his delts and his lats and his serratum, but yes, you can look at his glutes if you'd like to, Ron.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan.
It's kind of a flat ass, to be honest.
It is
like,
actually.
Ron,
it's
I'm
not
gonna
as
quibble a little bit.
Yeah, you know. Now that I look at it, it's not as badonkadonk as I would like.
Well,
I think badonkadonk is my new word.
He works on his hamstrings a lot, as you can see.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point.
Well, and
he's not doing as many squats.
This is all beside the point because this is all down a little bit to the artist's style. But if you go beyond the artist's style and look at the costume, I mean, there's a lot of shit that just works. And there's a lot of shit here, too, that I think is maybe gets a pass, like I said previously, for being part of the golden age when superhero designs were first being codified.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I was never really a fan of Gold Shield Batman situation. It was always part of my life because it was the de rigueur bat thing for the whole life. I mean, way before 89. I mean, 89 did it because it was in the comic books forever. And it's just like I always liked a little simpler bat design, but I think it was because one of those original comic book hipsters that was like, what if the 40s crappy costume was drawn good though by modern people? You know, Mazzucchelli did that to the nth degree, and a lot of other people jumped in to do shit. So yeah, I just love the like. It's like you go. This guy, see, like one of them will help you across the street. This guy is like Bela Lugosi. You know what I'm saying? There's something powerful there.
Yeah, so we're looking at this is the David Mazzucchelli Batman from Batman Year One specifically, and so this has a little bit more of that 40s flavor where he's very much drawn to be a little bit more Dracula-like. He's very much drawn to have black cape, mask, boots, gloves, as opposed to the more classic blue cape, mask, boots, and gloves. And then he's also got that little bit of a bow to his ears in this one, where they kind of, it's like they've been stressed under a weight or something, like they're kind of buckling to the outside. I have never really jived with that. I know some people do. I like a good straight ear on my Batman.
Oh, you like the
I think this
Batman.
one, this one kind of evokes a little bit of the demonic as well, like just sort of like horns or turned, or like, you know, the ear turned into like the animal is listening to something, you know, hella important and is about to jump on you. All of those things are communicated with that turned in / bent in ear. Whereas the one on the sides, it does communicate. So the stubby ears that are kind of to the exact side really communicate stability. You know what I'm saying? And then Neil Adams' length communicates that as well. You know what I'm saying? They just seem like, yeah, dude, he's ready. Running at full speed, they're still straight as an arrow.
Yeah, that Neil Adams Batman design is so iconic. We're taking a look at it here. This is from one of the most iconic images of Batman from when he first fought Ra's al Ghul, as drawn by Neil Adams. But I always felt like, I mean, it was the Neil Adams cowl design that was transported directly for the Michael Keaton movie.
Yep.
You know, that to me, I was always kind of a triumph of that first Batman '89 movie.
Yeah,
that costume is one of the dopest costumes for sure.
And it definitely incorporated the gold shield that had been part of Batman iconography forever.
Yeah.
Even adding a little extra bat feet or extra bat butt down at the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Because it seemed like in the comic book iconography, it's just like his the little we're zooming in on the actual bat symbol. It's got more little points, you know, as though to indicate like the bat's butt or little hind legs or something, and then that straight drop down tail. Which do bats have tails? Is that what they do?
I mean,
sort of,
kind of
something to stabilize them when they fly, because everything that flies generally needs something to do that. So
yeah.
Also worth noting that symbol was simplified into the more classic corporate Batman logo for Batman Returns and subsequently Forever.
Yeah, see. And can you go back to the Neil Adams real quick?
Of course.
Bill? I think this is the one where the Joker, he was trying to fight the Joker, and the Joker like beat his ass and had all this he threw him in an aquarium where he had to like save a guy in a wheelchair while a shark was trying to eat them, and he got really beat down by that, and then he has to chase the Joker down the sand. That's that. That's what that's from.
Oh, no kidding. See, I thought this was from the Ra's al Ghul story, but you just schooled me. So
like to read the panel says the battle in the aquarium, and I was like, yeah, and he's talking about how he can't get up to full speed because he got beat up. But I think the Joker slips on a slimy rock from pollution or something. It's like, hey kids, don't pollute.
I do want to mention one thing about this costume, but then it's also in the drawing, which is the shadow of the costume. It looks so menacing and so kind of bat-like. It's almost like a bat-ish symbol that he's putting as he
on the
runs
ground. Yeah,
on the ground. It's almost like the costume is making an extra thing for him that is going to create more intimidation eventually when you're behind a light and someone sees a bat thing on the wall and it's like, what the, all of that sort of thing.
I mean, I've always loved the fact that Batman's silhouette is essentially his symbol. Like, there's something kind of amazing about that.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. I just one of those things where you're like, there's so much function to the Batman's costume, and it works in so many different ways. And even in this one, where we're looking at where it's like, look, I'm Batman who's smiling, but also I'm Batman who looks like a bat.
Well, I mean, I will say this, as much as this costume in a lot of ways is just a superhero template costume, it's trunks, a belt, standard length boots, standard length gloves. They add these little pointy accoutrements to every part of his costume that really sells that sort of demonic look that Ed was talking about. From he has horns, he's got these scalloped razor looking things on his forearms, even his boots come to a point. And I think every great Batman design acknowledges that as well, to say nothing of the scalloped cape. So there is something about, like, when you look at him in silhouette, he's just pointy all over. And that is inherently menacing. He's got, like, he looks sharp no matter how you're looking at him.
And also the thing about like comic books, you give the artist a chance to interpret something every time you give them an opportunity to draw one of these characters. And with Batman, it's like, I'm just looking at this basic Batman. I can see this basic Batman in Batfleck and Bale and all the different Batmans, the Lee Bermejo Batman. This Batman is inside Lee Bermejo's Batman. He just leatherized the cape, and he made the belt like, just fuck it, man. Fuck these little tubes. There's no way Batman could put anything useful in little tubes like this. The classic Bat belt had little kind of chapsticks all around the Bat belt that were supposed to have highly concentrated bullshit for Batman to do stuff with. Lee Bermejo was like, no one could do that. Put big fat pouches, like, And it's just like, and he went even deeper than those pouches. Those pouches are regulation size. You can have the same sort of type of stuff in each of them. No. I need a night light, a flashbang grenade, a pouch like that, a batarang. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody really apportions their gear. A lot of times it isn't symmetrical. It needs to be where it needs to be for maximum effectiveness.
Well, and just talking about how you can push the design.
Ooh.
I mean,
this is Kelly Jones.
Yeah.
This is a Kelly Jones pinup of Batman.
One of the great stylists in all of comics, Kelly Jones. But if you look at it, this costume is the exact same costume as this Jorge Luis Garcia Lopez, like marketing, smiling Batman. You look at this Kelly Jones where he's perched above a gargoyle looking so sort of deformed because of Kelly Jones's style, but it is still the same Batman design. And there is something amazing how like you can retain the character and the recognizable silhouette, even when you're pushing it to very extreme proportions, very extreme chiaroscuro, all the stuff that Kelly Jones is doing in this image.
Yeah, super tall ears looking scary as hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that pool of cape, there's like a pool of cape around his neck. That's almost like there's a pool of cape around his knees and a pool of cape around his neck, almost making it seem like he's coming out of like a portal or something. You know what I'm saying? Like he's of another universe. He's even colored a little different and laid out a little different than the rest of the background, which is more muted and gray. He's like stark black and white. You know what I'm saying? And there's no hatching on his body, really. It's all actual, just like pools of black. So it's like, man, he exists on another plane, man. When you get deep on the Batman artistry, they could really make him look like how he would be perceived by people. It looks like he came from another dimension. It looks like he's not even a real guy. I mean, yeah.
I also think that cape, and I think it's the combination of the character being sort of this thing from the shadows, and the fact that you just add those weird scallops to the bottom of the cape that makes it more recall like bat wings. The cape becomes such a stylistic statement across all those different artists, and it's been treated so many different ways. And that, I think, almost starts maybe a deleterious trend in comics where it's like suddenly capes have to be the most expressive, most badass part of any character design, when really like it works for Batman, but that's because it's very specific to Batman.
Yeah, and it works for Spawn because it makes sense in Spawn. But like if you just do it for no reason, just because like it's cool and it doesn't really go with the character, it's not going to be as cool. But then we haven't hit on it. Or what are we going to next? Because I don't want to mess up the flow because this is interesting. But like the cape is this cape is so different than Superman's cape.
Well, and we'll get to Superman's cape. I got a lot of thoughts on Superman's cape, but I think first, before we move off of Batman, let's take a look at Batman Beyond.
Oh,
and this is the first appearance of a Bruce Timm design, which actually this one might have been Darwin Cook. Bruce Timm was at least the art director, but I'm not exactly sure who was ultimately responsible for the Batman Beyond design. But very similar to what we were talking about with the Spider-Man designs, taking the basic iconography of Batman and just transposing it into a totally different, into a totally different milieu, you create something that's like really badass and really specific on its own, but also is very much a piece with the classic Batman design.
Now, this picture that we're holding on presently, what is this from? Because that shit looks ill as fuck.
Amazing. That shit is dope.
This is an image drawn by a comic book artist named Dyke Ruan. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. But this was a cover to a recent comic that DC published, set in the world of Batman Beyond.
Wow. Okay. If that costume came out, I wouldn't hate Batman Beyond so much. No, when you go back to the regular Batman Beyond costume, even that one that I love that there is, much like the 2099 Batman, rather 2099 Spider-Man costume, just enough design elements, and then design elements like the large ears that are more ear-like in their wideness to going down to points. They look like Man-Bat's ears, kind of, but stylized for the Batman brand, which harkens way back to like 40s era Batman costume.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That shit is tight.
That's what I mean. I think that in a lot of ways, this is maybe an oversimplification of the Batman design, but I don't know that that's a criticism, because the fact that you just take this down to a black bodysuit, but that really kick-ass looking, it's still a utility belt, but it's a futuristic utility belt on this robotic suit. And then just that blood red bat symbol that even itself is a simplification of the bat symbol, but again, feels more menacing. It's like sharper, it's more aggressive, it's larger, it's more in your face. And even the scallops on the arm, it's like we're down from 3 to 2, and there's no delineation between them and the arm. Like they're just there for the silhouette. But there's also a reason, both traditionally in that Batman has those, and then functionally in that they're part of his offensive or defensive weapons. So, there's something about this. I'm a sucker for both simplicity and high contrast in my designs. And this one, I think, fits both to a T.
Yeah. I mean, and the red makes you think of the blood that is about to get out of your face.
Well, just the red inside the cape thing really gets me. He can tuck his cape away and pop it out into these shapes and stuff. I think I didn't have very much imagination for Batman Beyond when I was a kid, because I just really didn't like it. I didn't really like the idea of Batman being like this set of attributes you kind of put into a suit and just give to any old asshole shows up and helps you fight some guys. I wasn't really down with that part. But as a design thing, and as a Batman has to remain, and who's gonna do all that goddamn training and go to all these places and do all that shit like you did. But nobody would even have the opportunity to do that. So give them a couple shortcuts, give them some exosuits. Come on. Do it. Yeah, it's a symbol for America. Make it easier for your kids to go fight crime.
I mean, I always like the idea that the reason the exosuit exists is because he was getting older and he was determined to still be Batman. And so he needed to start making up for the fact that his body was sort of failing him. But then once you remove it from him, that gives a lot of advantages to somebody who is already sort of young and at least somewhat trained. So it made sense. It made enough sense for me. But I hear what you're saying.
I really enjoyed Batman Beyond. So
I did too.
It's a good time.
Yeah, well, that's great for you guys. That's just your opinion, man. But I really do like this particular image that we're looking at. I love this design of the Batman Beyond suit. I think it's super sick.
Yeah. Well, and so here we're seeing a totally different take on the idea of Batman's cape, where, traditionally the cape can be used as some sort of glider / parachute. And that's when it gets unfurled and you see all those great scallops and shapes. Here, it's just straight up like a glider built into his back that he can unfurl when he needs it. But let's go back to what you said, Ron. Batman's cape functions in such a different way from Superman's. So whereas Batman's cape is very much about the sense of menace, the sense of blending into the shadows, the sense of kind of exaggeration that goes with the character.
Yeah, theater.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Superman's cape has an entirely different sort of reason for being. And so let's look at the very first superhero, the one on whom all these costumes are based, way down here at the bottom. Here we go. Superman. And right away, I got to say, as much as Alex Ross is synonymous with Superman, I don't like this cape treatment in this.
This cape sucks ass. It's too long.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, this cape sucks ass and it's too long. It's the dynamics of it are great. That upper part of the fold and shit. Those lower folds down by his knees, and I love the gap in the boots where you see the black and the gap of his boots right there. That is fucking super sick. That costume is really on his body. But yeah, shorten that cape up, buddy. We don't got fabric to waste.
I mean, the whole point of it is clearly to be an inspiration, though. The way it's blowing is dramatic and cool. It's not intimidating. It's not used to intimidate. It's almost used to inspire instead of being intimidating. I mean, even though it is overdone and huge, a little too long in this drawing, the whole point of it is to inspire people.
I think there's an interpretation of Superman that could argue that his cape is meant to look like a flag waving.
Yeah.
You know, I am not a person who really subscribes to that idea, but if that's your bag, I hear you. To me, the Superman cape, first of all, Superman is a children's character. And I think the more you try to push him away from being that, the more incongruous everything feels.
Interesting.
And as a children's character, the cape is there to make him look cool when he moves. To me, the cape is there to accent when he flies, how is he moving? When he runs at super speed, how is he moving? The cape is just a visual cue for like how he exists in space and to really sell the sense of motion. That's what I think Superman's cape is for.
Do you have some examples of that?
Well, I certainly have some examples of the cape length I prefer, but actually I've got one here that's a pretty good example. Where did it go? Here we go. So This is the great Ross Andrew, who famously drew the Superman versus Spider-Man crossover that this image is from. I think this is a perfect Superman cape length. Like, if he was standing straight, it would essentially fall to maybe below his knees. But as he's flying through the air in all these different poses, the cape is just there to accentuate what he's doing in the air, to catch a breeze and just show he's moving fast. He's maybe falling here as the wind picks it up. I think Superman's cape should be used even more than it usually is to accentuate his movement. But this is an example of sort of what I think of when I think of the cape. This Frank Quitely image, the cover of All-Star Superman #6, where he's looking down at Jonathan Kent's grave, is a nice middle ground between the idea of the cape being a flag versus the cape being sort of this motion indicator. Here, Superman is standing in repose, and the cape is there to show that, like, despite there being a pretty strong wind, he is still standing straight against it. But again, I think the cape sells the environment. The cape sells like how he exists in space. And because he's got the cape here, you understand that there's a cold, chill wind blowing across the plane, and he's standing there with his back to it. And that automatically sells a mood that I think the piece encapsulates.
100%. And if you're listening here, you should go look up this cover, because also the grass is clearly being blown in the same direction, and it adds that's okay. Yeah, that really makes a big difference. It's that length you like.
Yeah, to me, like, guys like Frank Quitely, Doc Shaner, who's one of the great modern Superman artists, even though he hasn't drawn the character professionally nearly enough. If you go and look up his Instagram in particular, Superman is one of the characters that he loves playing around with, and he gets the cape length exactly right. Another guy that I love is Francis Manapul. Again, a guy who doesn't draw Superman professionally quite enough. One of the things I love that Manapul does that I do when I draw Superman is he imagines the blue of Superman's costume essentially being an even lighter value than his skin tone. And to me, I think that achieves two things. Number one, it means that he's always going to be approachable because his suit is as bright as you can imagine. There's nothing, murky, shadowed, dark about him. Yeah. And number two, it creates the opportunity to do what I like to call the anti-silhouette, where, like, even if the rest of him is in complete darkness, his body is still going to be light. You know what I mean? Like, you can imagine this Superman being in shadow. His cape is black, his boots, his trunks, his face even is black, but this costume isn't going to get quite black. And to me, that really is a great graphic way to accentuate the idea of this guy being like a beacon of light, being a beacon of hope. I think more than a big regal cape, a good bright costume does that for you.
Agreed, because I do think the muting of Superman was it was the wrong direction, just like the fucking pouchification of Batman may have been a problem. You know what I'm saying? There's certain trends that come through. So yeah, I do like the circus, anything that harkens back to the fact that he's a circus strongman and that they all wore trunks and capes and shit to communicate stuff and indicate the motion of the dope stuff they were doing for large audiences that maybe didn't have the best seat in the house.
Right.
All this stuff, all these things that harken back. Superman's the guy.
I mean, look, he should look like an old school wrestler when it comes down to it. Like, that's the aesthetic of a good Superman.
Okay. I like
one thing I do want to point out, and this is a rule that I came up with that is 100% correct, and I'm glad to have the forum to really put it out there in the universe. This is a smaller image, but I want to point out any great Superman design, especially in comics, will have equal vertical proportions on the blue of his upper body and the blue of his lower body, which means the cut of the trunks and the height of the boots do a lot of work. And I think that this is one of the main drawbacks. If you look at, say, Christopher Reeve's Superman, well, you can't see his legs here, but one of the things that they do wrong, because his belt hits essentially at his navel, it gives him this great stocky upper body look, but the cut of the briefs are way high, almost like a woman's bikini. So when you see him in a full body shot, the blue of his legs are substantially longer than the blue of his torso, which essentially makes him look leggy. It makes him look feminine. And that's just, it's not a good choice with Superman. So if you're gonna do and this is tough because a human body in real life is proportioned differently than your superheroic body on the page. And so it's easier to get away with this on the page. But if you are going to include the trunks in live action, this is a rule that in my mind must be followed.
Just a little bit more trunk. I think a little bit more trunks.
That's what I'm saying.
Evened it out. Yeah.
Give him a little more trunk and suddenly he looks a lot more balanced. And even Alex Ross, pull the line of that trunk down a little bit and the trunks are going to look less awkward because they don't look like a woman's bikini, and the whole body is going to look more balanced. As it stands right here, he looks to me out of proportion. His legs look too long for his upper body. If you just pull the line of the trunk down a little bit, he stands a lot stronger to me.
Well, this is definitely him being like I've seen your drawings, and I think that you kind of abhor the 10 heads high person. I think you really don't like that. And I think that this is definitely a 9. This is like a 9 heads high person, at least, if you really look at it.
I feel you, but I still think that the rule applies. Like, if you could just do what Frank Quitely does here,
right?
And if you look at any Frank Quitely image of Superman, he follows this rule. And by the way, we don't have it on here, but like even Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who draws, Superman with a stockier torso, makes up for it by essentially bringing his boots almost to his knees. And so still the blue is balanced. It's just a visual design thing. The vertical dimension of the blue of the upper body needs to match the vertical dimension of the blue of the lower body. And that is non-negotiable.
I don't know if this picture will do the deal, but there you go. Yeah. You see how, that really does make him look different. You're right.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's my treatise, but Ross Andrew does it as well. You don't really see a good full body shot of Superman here, but he adheres to it as well.
It's pretty balanced.
That's what I'm saying. I think that the best Superman artists, even if they can't articulate it, just have an innate design understanding that this is how the trunks are supposed to work in relation to the rest of his body. It divides the body into 2 even fields of blue. And so, like I said, got to be that way, non-negotiable.
Okay, and let's talk about the costume a little bit. We talked about the cape and all that and the non-negotiable blue, but like boots, it's a little more underwear-ish looking for the trunks.
Well, it doesn't have to be, though. And again, if you go back to this Francis Manipal version, I guess that one is more underwear. That one's more underwear looking. But like the Frank Quitely version, to me, is a great treatment of the trunks, where it looks more like wrestling trunks. it doesn't look like something that's going to ride up his ass crack if you see him from behind.
Now I'm just picturing Soups with a wedgie.
Pardon the siren in the background. I don't know exactly why they're sending police down here, but...
Well, they're like, hey, man, looks like there's some drawings of Superman that aren't quite balanced. We're going to have to come and break this party up.
Absolutely. All right. It's actually an ambulance, but it's going away now, so it'll be gone in a minute.
Yeah, they beat up the people drawing Superman wrong. I'm telling you, this
it happens.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, again, the trunks are a big issue for me where it's, man, maybe we should just wait this out.
Yeah, what is happening? Let's wait.
I don't know. They're sending a fire engine and an ambulance past my house right now.
Cloverfield.
We'll have to.
It's gonna say a big ass crab leg comes through your fucking ceiling.
I know.
And I'm like, where's Superman now? Shit.
Yeah.
All right, we're ready.
I think we're okay. All right.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, the trunks for me are kind of a sticking point. I don't like essentially Christopher Reeve style trunks where they look like a bikini, where they do look like, I don't know. To me, if you look at this, like he's got a wedgie in the back. You know what I mean? Yeah. Those high hip huggers are just not a great look. I'd love for the trunks to be more trunks, almost like boxer briefs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why I always liked Daredevil's designs. All of Daredevil's designs that are actually good. They really do a good job of keeping away from the wedgie situation. You know what I'm saying? That's why I always love that. But it's the same thing. Red trunks, selling the superhero ideal, looking like an old school wrestler or boxer or whatever. That's exactly what it needs to be. Because like, yeah, they have to look cool from the back too, man. They kick you in your mouth. You don't want to, see their nuts when they're kicking you high or whatever,
Exactly.
We gotta get some trunks in here, man.
I do see what you're saying about how this blue is not quite as good as a lighter blue, which is crazy because I'm used to this blue. But now that you've showed me that other blue, like I guess Frank Quietly does the same thing too.
Exactly.
Like that blue is just a little brighter, a little better. That's interesting.
And it's tough. I mean, I think it would be tough to do in live action. Like I didn't hate the way that they took Superman's costume in Man of Steel. That said, if you could find a way like to combine a material with a lighting scheme with maybe some CG enhancement to make it almost seem like the suit itself is slightly luminescent, like it catches ambient light like a little bit more than any sort of normal fabric, I think that'd be an amazing treatment of Superman's suit.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Gunn's going to do with the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because the costume's probably going to change. We're going to get a different style of Superman. I know we're getting that. So super curious to see how that's going to come out.
All right. Well, we know some of the drawbacks on Superman's costume. The ubiquity of just the chest emblem, I think, is maybe a little bit restricting for superheroes. Works great for Superman, but like not every superhero needs to have a chest emblem. And of course, the trunks were not a great trend to introduce into the superhero design scheme. But you got to give props for the guy who did it first. And as far as like a classic superhero costume, still does it best.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely that word again, iconic. There isn't the every choice that a Batman costume, let's say, takes is off of this format. Off, all of these guys in the cape or no cape, trunks or no trunks, symbol in your chest or no symbol in your chest, bisecting belt situation or some sort of design around there that kind of suggests a bisecting belt situation, like Spider-Man has. Just it all comes from this template. So like we definitely got to give props. I mean, he spawned 1,000 yellow belts.
And I mean, it is true too. The color scheme of blue, red, yellow, the primary colors, just became de facto. If you're a hero, you got dominant blue, red, or yellow in your costume, and that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's why Batman got pushed more towards blue. Obviously, blue has always been a way to indicate light hitting black, but they really blued him up in the heyday,
Yeah.
For like most of his heyday, from even the 50s strange science stories to Neil Adams stuff all the way up to, it started getting darker around like Bernie Wrightson doing like the Cult and stuff like that. It started getting darker in the comics again. And obviously the movie had by 89 made it dark, had made it cool to have a black black man suit. And Mazzucchelli does a black one too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was essentially, well, from the later Golden Age through most of the Silver Age, you had a blue and gray Batman. So it really was well established, and then they started taking it back to the roots of that Bill Finger design, which we should mention, often credited to Bob Kane, but by all accounts, the real true Batman design was a product of the great Bill Finger, who for a long time was unheralded as a co-creator of Batman, but in recent years has become much celebrated as a co-creator of Batman.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's
so who are we looking at next?
Yeah, this was a Ron choice, and since we've been doing these big iconic heroes, let's go with a small press icon, and that is the Goon. Created by the great Drew Powell, I believe.
I think it's Eric Powell, but yes, he's great.
Well, damn it, Drew Powell. Who's that? Anyway, created by the great Eric Powell, the Goon. Ron, what do you love about it?
Well, what I like about this character, because I guess this is more of a design, but it is a costume, because it's like the hat, the gloves, the striped shirt. It says who this dude is. You 100% see what that guy is by what he's wearing, period. He is a goon. He's the guy who punches people out. That's what he does.
And by the way, I think that this design makes great use of just like popular consciousness, where it essentially combines like the hat and gloves of the ubiquitous 1940s street thug with the striped shirt of the ubiquitous prisoner across all of pop culture. So it's like you're taking two iconic cartoon images and just smashing them together into a costume.
Yeah. No, that's well observed. That's exactly why he's so cool.
Yeah, it just tells you who the character is immediately, and you even get a little bit of a silhouette out of this guy with the hat and the gloves. You even with the silhouette, you still get a pretty good idea of who this would be.
Well, I think this sort of crosses more into character design than just costume design, which is another episode that we will be doing. But the silhouette of his face in particular is very specific. And then when you pair that with the hat and with the gloves, it becomes an iconic silhouette.
Yeah. So it's a small one that I wanted to talk about, but it's a pretty great, first off, it's a good comic if you haven't read it.
Oh, fantastic.
It's also just that it shows you that like the reason why we're talking about Eric Powell right now is he did exactly what the big boys did, and what Mignola does, and what some of these guys do is like they're able to play the iconic game with the big boys. You know what I'm saying? With their designs.
Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned it, maybe we got to hit it next.
Oh, baby. This is one of the all-time great designs in all of pop culture, certainly in comics, and that, of course, Mike Mignola's Hellboy.
Yeah.
So there's so much that works about this, and this is another one that blurs the line between costume design and character design, but Mignola is renowned for his sense of design and composition, and I think that his greatest creation is a testament to all that. The two shaved down horns on his forehead is just an absolute stroke of genius. Like the silhouette is pretty iconic and recognizable with the horns, which we do have an image of here somewhere. As I try to.
I think it's farther. It's farther up. Yeah.
So you see him with the horns, and that's a pretty iconic design. But once you chop those things off and it just becomes those very iconographic circles.
So this one is perfect to me because one of the things about Hellboy is he's a guy who wants to be part of the world, but knows he can't be part of the world, so he wears a trench coat.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And it again, and that costume, it tells you exactly what you want to know. He's trying to sort of fit in, but also trying to hide a little bit at the same time. And that trench coat right there alone lets you know what he's doing. Of course, we got a good belt with his tools and the things he's going to use in the fight. That's
like that Batman utility belt as drawn by Lieber Mijo that Ed was talking about earlier, where it's just got everything possible kind of slapped together on it.
Dude, and that's what I was about to say, man. That's what I'm talking about. It's like this life doesn't give you these even things. They give you 3 on this side, 1 on that side, 1 on the back. It's for best utility. And it's really cool. Things don't really match up aesthetically like little pellets along your belt. That's not real. So I love that in this fantasy world, he can't have little pellets and little super small things on his belt. In this fantasy world of demons and gods and monsters, he still has big chunky shit all over his belt because that's what he needs to do his job. I love it. I love it. That's the beauty part. And the things you choose to make realistic versus not.
Yeah, and the trench coat is also. Am I remembering correctly that it's a military-ish?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit up to interpretation because Mignola's art style is so simplified. I always read it as almost being like a Bogart style trench coat, just a very classic tan trench coat.
Yeah.
But certainly it could be like a military. I mean, I think the original trench coat was literally from World War I, when during trench warfare and it started raining and snowing, they issued trench coats to the military.
Yeah. And so part of me was thinking like part of that also is him thinking of him as a soldier, because that's kind of how Hellboy thinks of himself in some of these runs. Is he's a soldier saving people, doing the fighting that needs to be done, and has that look for it as well, while also having that need to fit in and be part of the world that he's been thrust in. So it's
also such a smart choice from a design perspective, because the character has so many unique elements to his body. It would be overkill to put him in something that felt like a costume. You know what I mean? Like it'd be overkill to put him in like some over-designed spandex getup.
So, also, the sense of motion. He gets the sense of motion from the trench coat and the tail, but he didn't have to really depend on the tail all the time.
Yeah.
This is definitely one where we're going to be talking about the design. For this will be a double. This will definitely be in the cost in the greatest character designs as well.
I mean, I would also say Ed kind of brought this up with the belts, the idea of asymmetry, which is so far not something that's been brought up here, but I think often works wonderfully in these pop culture designs. And the idea of Hellboy having that right hand of doom, that his hand is grafted to this giant stone gauntlet that, is sort of unhideable and unmistakable, again, is just a great piece of silhouette design, where it's like, no matter what, like even if you see him in a silhouette where you can't make out the horns, and maybe he's even, got a hood up or something, he's still going to have that damn right hand of doom, and it's unmistakable. And so that becomes a part of his costume design as well, that I think is just fantastic, because it feels like something that they would graft to you in hell, right? You've got this giant, heavy stone hand. You can't hold anything delicately because you have this stone hand. So it works from a character perspective, but then it also is just a brilliant piece of design.
Yeah, and also, if you can go like two, 3 down from that Adam Hughes one, that's Adam Hughes drawing like the Hand of Doom, the trench coat, the stuff, and you see Adam Hughes draws so much more in more of a complicated fashion than Mike Mignola, but every single design note has been heated.
Yep,
every single one, and he's so recognizable as Hellboy. And I love how the horns are like the classic goggles of sort of smart characters or flying characters or archaeologist sort of characters. The horns mimic that iconography. You know what I'm saying? It just
absolutely
buddy.
no,
and you still have the tail peeking out.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
It's really good.
So yeah, I just wanted to note that his design survives anything. Duncan Fredrego, Fregredo draws a great Hellboy. Mike Mignola draws a great Hellboy. Yeah. Adam Hughes draws a great Hellboy because Hellboy is great.
You know 100%. What, guys? Ron Swallow's going to draw a Hellboy for the next Patreon people, and I don't know how good it's going to be. Probably not good.
I mean, if you watercolor it like this Mike Mignola sketch, that is like. That would be over the top.
Extra points, baby.
Yeah, I like that. Start learning how to watercolor right now.
Yeah, we're going to talk as we go back to Hellboy in our character design one. The him having 0 shoulders is hilarious. It's always every comic book character. It's all about having these super broad shoulders, and with Hellboy, they're just like, nah, not necessary. That's Mike Mignola, man. Just fucking great, man.
Hell, he might even have kind of small arms.
Well, they're certainly not. They're he doesn't get his strength from lifting lumps. Yeah, he's dragging his hand around. That's why it's strong.
Yeah, no, he's almost wiry at times. Like he's not really portrayed as being really muscle bound. In contrast, this was an interesting one. You guys wanted to throw this up here. I don't necessarily. I mean, maybe from a character design standpoint. But guys, why are we talking about the Hulk? what is happening right now?
Come on. You don't love that right there?
This Ryan Ottley
Cyclops.
The spaceship Hulk design, as ludicrous as it is, that was a pretty good story. And this is a pretty cool design, but it's so not the Hulk. What's the thought here? What are we talking about?
Well, I just wanted to mention anytime the Hulk actually I was gonna mention look up his for you at home or whatever, any of the costumes from the Indestructible Hulk era. He was just wearing like this Walter Simonson drew it, Mahmoud Assar drew it, all these brilliant artists drew it, and it never Lino Francis Yu drew it. It never looked cool because the Hulk had too many clothes on. It just doesn't work. Hulk with actual clothes on, Hulk with a uniform that he shows up for some fucking job. It's just antithetical to the character. Like, and again, it goes back to character design. He's going to be a big one in character design.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, costume design, he's never going to be in the conversation because he can't have a fucking costume. He's like one of the only characters that literally can't. And you can say the purple pants or whatever, but he can't have a costume.
It's not even a counter argument, but the one maybe exception is the World War Hulk outfit.
Oh, totally agreed. Absolutely, yeah.
That kind of barbarian style look, that worked, especially for that story.
Him ending up in some clothes, all right. Him going to a closet and being like, "Yeah, Daddy, I'm about to put this motherfucker on," and that's just ridiculous to me.
Agreed. Strong agree on that one.
So I did find some Hulk armor for us. I'm going to put it up over here. Let's see. Boom. That does look stupid.
That's Walter Simonson drawing the Indestructible Hulk outfit. Yeah, just look at it.
Yeah,
it's just
great drawing. Great drawing.
Yeah, but
it doesn't make sense because I don't know if you've ever seen anything hit the Hulk. It doesn't do anything to him. Armor is unnecessary.
Well, it's just like those Jim Lee, which we're not going to show, but those Jim Lee Superman and everybody designs where he made everybody look like they had segmented armor. It's just like, man, an armored up Superman. Next thing you know, we got Aquaman with a whole scuba suit on, baby.
Yeah.
Although I did enjoy the Hulk, but he was mostly naked in the Thor Ragnarok.
Well, that was a take on the World War Hulk armor from the comics.
Yeah, so maybe that's why I enjoyed it, because it kind of feels like it's something he just put on because he thinks it looks cool.
Yeah, it's a gladiator costume.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to take us to some of the weirder corners of this. We still have some big characters that we're going to return to, but let's just spice things up. I am a huge fan of the 1990s design of the Ray.
Oh yeah, Casada. Well, dude, the Ray is clearly late for band practice. That's the only that's the one. I mean, he's definitely looking Nutcracker-esque with this jacket. But I do get what you're saying in regards to a simple, iconic design of the 90s. And I love me some weirdly limp wrists and gloves. I used to draw that look all the time. I bit that off of Casada. Weirdly limp wrists coming out doing something athletic, and that was my jam, dude.
Yes.
And let me say, like, a little Michael Jackson style into it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I like that those shoes are clearly shoes. Like they've got a little of a little fold over there with the boot style on that.
Well, it's that same limp wrist. He's got a limp ankle thing there too. On his shoes.
Yeah.
It's pretty dope. But also terrible all at the same time. I'm sorry.
Well, here's what I will say in its defense. Take a look at this image.
Oh,
I love two things. The first one being, all right, we've been talking about silhouette, right? And you got to make a recognizable silhouette. Well, so the shitty version of this is Sunspot from the X-Men, where it's like when he uses his powers, he's just a living silhouette. And when he does that, you realize how lame his costume is because the silhouette just looks like it could be anybody.
Yeah.
I love the idea of taking a character who becomes a living silhouette and you give him these very sort of iconographic designs on this jacket that he wears.
The stripes are ill. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And it becomes so cool to look at when he's all powered up like this. And then number two, I just think that helmet is dope. Yes, it's a take on both the Dr. Fate helmet and the original Captain Marvel, the Kree Captain Marvel helmet. But it's a cool looking helmet. It's got that fin on the top that looks partially aerodynamic, but also like partially it's just there to look cool. But it sort of goes with the oversized lapels. Like there's a certain exaggeratedness to the character that holds true up through the helmet. And just the fact that like he's often portrayed with this weird built-in chin strap that like goes down into this armored neck. Like it's a helmet design that you're not really finding on any other character. And like I mentioned before, like I'm just a huge mark for really unique mask and helmet designs.
Yeah, no, there are a couple characters that I'll talk to you about later as we get to them that I have to have them have a chin strap. I think a chin strap is perfect for a few characters.
But yeah, so props to the Ray. I think he's an underutilized DC character, and frankly, I'm also a huge mark. Again, high contrast when you're doing black on white with like really bright yellow. I love a high contrast costume. When you can make it work in high contrast, like this costume would work just as well in black and white as it does in color. And to me, I think that's the mark of a great costume.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. Oh, there's just some weird. We'll come back to the weird ones I've got down here. All right, let's go to what I thought was a controversial choice, and that is Captain America.
Yeah.
Ed, take us through your thought process.
I picked Captain America because you know what? It is a really classic comic book costume. And I think by a certain standard it's hard for it to meet the silhouette standard, but it does when you look at the flare for the boots and the flare for the gloves and the wings at the helmet. And probably he'd be holding his shield, There's the fact that he's a flag and the vertical stripes going down towards his, this is just iconic stuff. And the very fact that it was one of those costumes that they felt like they would never be able to do on screen. And when you look at every damn Captain America from the worst to the best, they all have something to do with this exact classic. There's some DNA of this inside every single version that they've ever done. And I just think that's impressive, dude, for something this kind of goofy and Buccaneer looking to be able to be updated and put into stuff. And it's one of the more iconic Marvel costumes, frankly. To me, it's like this Spider-Man, Silver Surfer, which is naked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's it's up here as far as Marvel iconic, costumes.
I will say this, like, it is a great adaptation of what I would argue is kind of an over busy flag design. Like the United States flag is pretty overwrought. And so to strip it down the way they have and make it work so well, and to do some things that you really don't see in a lot of superhero costumes, such as like bisecting him across the chest and the biceps. Like that's sort of a weird choice, but again, they just make it work. And the idea of like using those sort of Buccaneer style gloves and boots, I don't know why Jack Kirby decided to do that, but it does somehow work. And so
it adds a look of being a sailor or a military guy of some type, doesn't it?
Yeah, it almost feels like a formal military uniform in some way.
Yeah, like in
an old school. A dress, like he's fighting in his dress uniform. You know what I'm saying? Which they even carry that into like the movies and stuff. Like he was just sort of a for show type of guy. But yeah, I like I said, it's one of those it's one of those, you know what? I judge things by, yes, you want to draw that character, but then when you start doing it, it's hard. That's my line of who's a fresh character. Spider-Man's up there because when your ass decide to draw Spider-Man, you just get your little coloring book out, you're ready to go. And you start, fuck, how many webs I got to do? The eyes got to be in perspective. I got to make this eye slightly smaller if he's tilting his head. It starts getting hard. And you start, okay, now the seam on his arm, how does it go? That's what happens when you start trying to draw a Spider-Man. Same thing with Captain America. You think Captain America is so goddamn simple. How many things are across his trunk? How is the star sitting? How big is it against the stuff? Blah, blah, all this stuff.
My attempt at Spider-Man is that. And you can see, not great.
Well, I love it.
From that definition, Ed, I will say for Captain America, his eyes always gave me such a hard time when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because they're not the white built into the mask eyes of almost every other superhero mask.
Nope.
Yeah.
No, you have to actually know where the orbital is on some level.
Yeah.
And put that motherfucker in there, dude. You got to really do it. And then to like draw the shield. I don't care how many protractors your ass has. All the ways of drawing the shield in perspective and even as a flat object, it's a task, man. Like I said, I included it in plus. Yeah, I love Mike Zeck. I wanted to give Mike Zeck some props because a lot of these Captain America drawings are Mike Zeck, and I think he really made the design sing, made it seem like something that is like really cool. Because you could draw Captain America poorly. It's very easy.
Oh, for sure. You know what? He's kind of downplaying it here, but you do see hints of it. Is that scale mail, that chain mail armor look for the top of his chest too? Like that's a weird decision from a design standpoint.
Yeah, and it's great to see artists kind of get around it. Like, here's a few.
Yeah,
I'm done.
All right. Well, I want to counter that with a pick of my own before we move on to another one of the most iconic Marvel characters. I think the greatest flag-based character design of all time is Captain Britain.
Oh.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Dude,
I mean, his helmet is great, and that's a chin strap helmet necessary.
Yes. I have no opinion on Captain Britain as a character. I don't know that I've ever read anything other than his Ultimate Universe version. But going back to my days as like a 9-10-year-old looking at Marvel trading cards, no costume was cooler to me than the Captain Britain costume. I think the way that they use white, the fact that like the majority of the costume is white, but then the way that they use the Union Jack symbol in both the mask and the torso, and even something about these dark side style thigh-high boots, which is a weird choice, but like, again, from a proportion standpoint of like just balancing the design, it works. I think this design is kick-ass.
And it feels like a British person would wear those boots.
That's very true.
Well, yeah, it's like
I like my boots to go over my knees, because like it rains. And I don't want my.
It's like fox hunting type gear or something like that.
Yeah,
so some hoity-toity out in the woods sport where from back
I'm
in the
riding my
days.
horse. I've got to make sure I have my over-the-knee boots.
And I love the flappy gloves. That is fucking sick.
Yeah.
And I definitely like how the Union Jack goes on his head, and even where the mask line is. I didn't really realize that about the design, but like right where the mask line is, where his face busts out, there's some Union Jack shit coming. Union Jack shit coming out, and yeah, the X that's made and where the white is. This is sick. The one thing I always remembered was how dopely he was drawn by Alan Davis. Like a lot of these are Alan Davis drawings and stuff. Like Alan Davis really, really, really got him, and Brian Hitch got him a bit too because he was biting off Alan Davis at the time before he took a limitless pill and went crazy. Because he's far more than a clone now. Definitely, never would say that. But like Alan Davis and Brian Hitch back in the days drew the hell out of some Captain Britain.
Yeah.
Wait, can you go back to that one with the dead Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Is that British Spider-Man?
Yeah, I think Captain Britain had a bunch of multiverse adventures.
That sounds awesome. I want to see British Spider-Man.
British Spider-Man.
Yeah, for sure. And like, you know.
Bit too many webs on this costume, isn't it?
Ain't it?
Ain't it?
Okay. Anyway,
big ups to Captain Britain. I do like the way that those flared gloves, like you mentioned, Ed, like that's sort of the only overt callback to the Captain America costume, but it does make these of a piece. Mm-hmm. And I also like, there's something about this stripe that goes across his torso, and the way that they make three dominant colors work. I would argue like probably better than Captain America. Not since Superman has a costume utilized three clashy dominant colors in such a cohesive way between the blue, the white, and the red. So I don't know.
Good.
Big ups to Captain Britain.
I love when someone who is a guy who punches people has real gloves, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Like is like a throwing punches type of guy, has gloves that he puts on, not gloves that are part of the costume or whatever. So
agreed. All right. So now we've talked about some also rans, but as long as we're talking Marvel, let's get into it. The little Canadian runt himself, and I gotta start with his original appearance.
Yeah, baby!
The Wolverine.
Yeah. This is the great Herb Trimby.
Yeah.
Jack Abel on the inks. Yeah. I love
Can I say this looks like terrible?
Well, comic art has evolved since the 60s, but you do this on a fucking daily to feed your fucking family.
Yeah, in 20 minutes. Yeah.
Well, you know, you usually do a page a day, but yeah, back then they were doing it a lot faster than that because they had to feed their families. But anyway, the point is the actual design is really interesting because you see like it's almost like whiskers around his nose area. They kind of did a whisker thing, and even that and those lines around the top of his nose going in toward the eye holes or whatever, those things are kind of harken back to when you see people start to draw that sort of symbol for the people's foreheads to indicate that the forehead is that's where the forehead is. That's really interesting. I think maybe those guys were looking at these comics being like, what the fuck is those lines? I'll push them up. That'll be where the head is.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. And again, he's bisected by a belt. He's wearing trunks. And these type of flary, girly boots that superheroes wear, I think this is what put all the manly men off of the comic books back in the days. Honestly, looking at all these thigh high boots, like these dudes look like hookers, man.
Also, I gotta say, it is not ideal to fight in those type of boots.
Well, I mean, you really get into the logistics of like, do those things catch on his other leg when he's like running and shit? He's got these giant spikes flaring out of the side of his calves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That said, I think Wolverine's a great character to talk about because he's gone through so many costume variations. Yeah. And yet they all kind of work together. Like they're all variations on this original costume, which you might argue is the weakest of all costume designs for Wolverine.
and
Well,
still
yeah, I mean
kind of cool.
every good design, the scallop shoulder joints,
Yeah.
the way that the vertical stripes that come over his shoulders, like they always draw his head in the middle of his chest, and those just kind of set it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A giant
every
leprechaun belt.
yeah, oh yeah, every design loves that belt. Almost every Wolverine design loves that damn belt to
They
this
do.
day.
I did want to show this drawing, which is sort of a
Ooh.
modern painted sort of Joe Jusko version of the original costume. I'm not going to say that it's less goofy, but like you can see how the DNA of Wolverine is really in that original design.
I mean, I
Yeah.
kind of love that mask, dude. It's kind of fresh.
It is fresh.
And to be honest, like the more modern masks are just an updated version of this, which in and of itself was such a weird departure for superhero masks. Like it took the idea of Batman's horn/ears and turned him into like weird fins that run the length of his brow line and wrap around. And like to this day, I'm still not sure exactly how this would work in live action. Maybe we'll find out when we get to Deadpool 3. But like it's a weird design that looks so cool on the comics page.
It really
Let's
does.
get to his second design, the brown suit.
Yeah.
Yep.
John Byrne here. This is actually sort of a weird take where they're replacing some of the brown with black. So let me see. I know I've got a more traditional. There's a Frank Miller version. This is my favorite Wolverine costume.
Yeah, no head piece.
Well, it's not even so much that because, like, yeah, I guess Miller did draw him a lot without a head, without a mask.
Well, because
on.
his hair becomes part of the character design in those scenarios.
This cover is fucking amazeballs. Just really quick, just allow me to wax this thing's car because I love how Frank Miller is not concerned at all with drawing Wolverine's claws. They're such an afterthought in this picture. He does not care. But look how lovingly he has drawn these ninjatos and katana blades. You know what I'm saying? And all the scabbards. People got double scabbards and shit. People got ninja wraps and stuff. You can see their toes, where their toes go into their tabi or whatever. All of this like Japanese art student shit that he's doing so good. You know what I'm saying? He even has one of the swords has a serrated edge on the knife blade. You know what I'm saying? That's heading towards you. So all this shit. And he just doesn't give a shit about drawing those claws, dude. He just doesn't give a fuck at all.
They're just 3 claws, real short, a little more realistic if you think about it. Coming out of that forearm.
The length is great. They just
I love
saber-tooth tiger fangs.
Yeah, I love a shorter Wolverine claw. I think that looks dope.
Yeah, see our episode on we had a knockdown drag out fight about how long his goddamn claw should be.
Ron was very much the dissenter in that one, so that was interesting.
It's a fun one.
But this is Mark Silvestri right here.
This
just
is
showing
dope.
you the illness of his suit. Yeah, this is good shit.
Yeah, and this is where they really codified the look of the mask. And you know, I'm more of a fan of sort of low profile fins, whatever you want to call these things on Wolverine. But Silvestri can draw the hell out of some big, bold, accentuated.
Oh, yeah. And for those playing at home, Wolverine issue 36 of the original run. And so it's got and you see that Wolverine up in the corner box with the little lines for his forehead? That's what I'm talking about, dude.
Yeah.
It survives.
And the other thing is the boot has the same earpieces basically as the head, so those are doubled, so you're getting I guess symmetry in those as well. And you've got the yellow with the brown. It's an interesting look.
I love that sort of tan and brown, and you know, you can push the brown more towards red, you can push the tan more toward yellow. But it's so unique as far as color schemes in comic. Can you name another character with a tan and brown costume? Like,
no,
you just don't see that. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, no, that was great for him, like as a Western hero character. Like, can you check out that one where he's about to stab Sabretooth? Oh,
yeah, man.
I love this, man. I just the spittle, and just how his claws come out, and you can see even in this drawing, his claws are about as long as his forearm. If you were to extrapolate his forearm, they're about the length of his forearm. But this is a nice era for art about Wolverine, and you can see his like his fangs because he's really going feral. Him and his daddy or his grand uncle or whatever the fuck they decided it was.
Whatever
going
it is,
feral on each other.
Yeah. And the other thing about Wolvie is, you talk about that the silhouette. Wolverine there's no other silhouette. It's not exactly like Batman.
Oh yeah.
You add the claws in, and obviously that's part of character design. And again, I'm sure this is another one we'll be hitting on the character design, but it's still part of the costume at the same time. Even if the claws are in, you still got the bumps on the
that
hand.
Indicate, that there's something about the launch out of here, motherfucker. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like all of this is really well thought out, and it makes sense. The brown and I guess the 2-brown version makes sense because it's also a guy who lives in the forest and is constantly in colors like that.
Well, that I think makes the most sense because it's like that's functional for the sorts of environments he's in.
Yeah.
I do want to point out just a quick props as far as character design. Like you can tell it's Wolverine even when he's just wearing jeans and a jacket. And that goes down to like the hair and the claws and all this other stuff. But that's kind of funny. But like, let's take a look at how the costume evolves a little bit because I have a real soft spot for this Jim Lee uniform era where it's like the yellow X-Men uniform with the blue undersuit. Wolverine looks kick-ass in this, and this was one that did not have any sort of mask or helmet, so he was always just barefaced.
Yeah, but the hair there gives it away. So
of course.
Yeah, that is dope. How do you guys feel about it doesn't look like a boot? How do you guys feel about that?
Well, what do you mean? It's got straps at the top.
All right, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, look, I think one of the things that these live action versions really teach you is that boots, even more so than gloves, like boots as drawn in the comics, just don't work that well.
No.
Again, I'll give props to Man of Steel. Like they did Superman's kind of seamless, form-fitting boot pretty well. But like, it's tough to make that sort of formless, shapeless, tight around everywhere look makes sense,
right? And plus you're just doing them nude and adding little noodly shit,
right?
You know what I mean? Like you see he just drew that leg nude and he was like, oh, let me just go a little bit over and put these straps on here, you know what I mean? It's just, everybody's naked and afraid. Let me see that Wolverine when the dark. I love it. I love it.
So speaking of Jim Lee,
Jim Lee does these drawings that are just for like for Twitch streams and for charities and shit, and he really just gets down on those drawings, man.
This version of the costume is what I would consider to be like the classic Wolverine costume, which is the costume that he had in the 1990s animated series. It's a take on his original costume, just a little bit more developed, a little bit more codified. Like they've really settled on what the design should look like. And so it's that iconic mask that's ported over from the tan and brown design with those big ass blue shoulder pads and then those just pointy streak designs across the top of his chest and the sides of his ribs. It's wildly impractical. Like you would laugh your ass off if you ever saw a grown man wearing something like this in real life. But as a piece of iconographic design, it's sick. It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why he gets the drop on everybody. They go, and then their just throats are slit.
Yeah. I want to add one of our buddies, Jeff Johnson's version on here too, just so you guys can take a look at it. It's one I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's hardcore.
Yeah, with the X belt.
Love the X belt. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just wanted to add that.
And he's got big forearms for big claws to come out, and they got a nice bow to them. Exactly.
Yeah.
See that, Ron?
I love that air. I mean, that was one of the other great. Ed's just trying to pick old fights. Let me just say, I loved from the 90s the fact that all the X-Men really had their own super distinct costumes, but they all had that black on red X somewhere on the costume just to sell that they were still a team. I think that's a cool way to treat the X. If you're not going to go uniforms, and I do think that I am partial to the X-Men having even just a Frank Whiteley style uniform where it's like they all have the same jackets. I prefer that. But if they are going to have their own super unique costumes, give them the red X. Just have them have that one unifying element.
Nice.
Yeah. And then finally, we would be remiss if we did not also acknowledge Wolverine's costume has evolved in recent years. They wanted to do away with the blue trunks. And so, and with the very 90s shoulder pads. And so they
added in the very 90s pouches.
The pouch belt. Well, I mean, here's a version without the pouches, but you can see that they just added some interesting. I don't know if I like this better, but they essentially took the sides of his torso down to the sides of his thighs and made those the dark blue that his trunks used to be. And then they cut into those dark blue fields with yellow pointy streaks, mimicking his old design. And then they also took the flare off the boots as well. Well, this one still has the flare. It's changed a bunch in recent years. I've seen designs that don't have the flared tops on the boots, but they've been playing with that design. It's like they don't want to go too far from the one everybody knows, but they want to update it and make it less corny. So you just keep seeing
one right here is, this one's not as bad. It's got these little yellow things on the diamonds on the side here that I think are kind of cool. It's the inverted. I kind of like it. I like the other one better.
Well, we're also old men. We should acknowledge.
Yeah. I am.
I mean, I like the reversing of the field. I just don't think that I like the actual change of the. I like that change of the mask. We're looking at Wolverine and the X-Men. I guess number 32 right now. The cover of it. All the little demons, all the little Nightcrawler demons are jumping out, and they were dealing with that for a while. And Wolverine trying to lead the house to this problem. But yeah, his mask is very close to the vest, almost like how they did Captain America's mask for the movie. They just sort of sanded it down to its most effective way they could do the wings and sort of paste them on the side. The most effective way you could do the mask is sort of give it just a little relief, but just sort of paste it to the side of his face. That's badass. I love that.
No, I agree. We don't have an image in here, but Ed McGuinness also does sort of those low profile fins. And I think that's one of the best looks. Like, I'll take that over these more pronounced flaring fins any day of the week.
Because I just think that's gonna get caught up in the underbrush while you're stalking motherfuckers, whatever. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, too many of these wide ass, design elements would stop a stealth character. I don't know why they think that that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, and we just saw all these little demons. Let's talk a little bit about the furry blue elf Nightcrawler. I picked this
so iconic.
I picked this character, and this is another one that crosses between costume design and character design. Obviously, the three finger, dark blue skin, demon tail is all a huge part of what makes this character work. But again, as someone who loves a high contrast costume, I fucking love this classic costume. It's a black costume with really unique designs at the edges of the boots and the gloves.
This is that Dave Cockrum shit, dog.
Yeah, man. This goes all the way back to New X-Men #1. And it is untrifled with to this day, because this is one of the great costume designs in all of comics.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's got those great shoulder things that are like a sort of again, this is one of the things that I really like when they do well in a costume, is that's part of what his head looks like. So the ears are like the shoulders, and it's a symmetry in it that is, repeating on the character. It's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned that with Wolverine too. And I agree. I think that goes even back to what we were talking about with Batman. It's like, you look across his costume and he's got these pointed motifs kind of everywhere. And you're seeing that here too, in a way that I think works really well. And different than Batman, because there is this sort of organic elf shape to the ears. And yeah, the shoulder pads just echo that weird organic elf shape, which I think is dope.
Yeah, I love those specific Buccaneer boots for him. That was pretty slick right there.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, he is a pirate at that time, so.
Yeah,
that's nice that swashbuckling feel to him.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you look at this sort of scalloped glove design, there's another example of recalling what Ron's talking about, where it's that same shape language just carried throughout the rest of the costume.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is great. I'm like learning a lot, like just by us going through this and looking at this. Like, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, when you don't look at it closely, you still see it because it's there, but you're not like taking note of it. So really looking at it and taking note that people who designed this stuff was like, oh, I want to show what, I want to add symmetry to all the costume within the character's look. And that it's just brilliant ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I think they say great design goes unnoticed because it's like when you really just nail it, people just accept it. And this goes for like interior design, building design of a magazine, whatever. Mm-hmm. When you really just nail it, it just feels like, oh yeah, that's exactly how it should be. So you're able to just move on unperturbed. But when you really start breaking things down, you realize, oh man, there's a lot of thought that goes into making things just feel right. All right. Let's talk about one of the other original superheroes, the partner of another entry on this list. And that, my friends, is Robin / Nightwing. But let's start with the Robin costume. If I can find him. Here we go. Ed, you brought this into the conversation.
I did. Because
let's talk about it.
Because look, again, this exact suit, which is like even itself a modernization of the Dick Sprang or whatever era, Dick Sprang era of of the Robin suit. The Robin Hood motif comes through for the chainmail draws to his like little his little shoulder, the shoulders being green, his vest being red.
The way the shoes are.
His little cape, his little woodland nymph, and then that design gets all the way up to being actually fucking fresh with like Damien's design, Tim's later designs. You know what I'm saying? Like all of those same motifs are in these much superior designs. You just had to give it about 70 years to percolate, is what I'm saying.
Just had to marinate a little bit. You know what? One thing I have to bring up, and I added this, and you don't know that I added this, but this original design was recently reinterpreted by the brilliant artist Dan Mora in the pages of Batman Superman World's Finest. And so he gave Tim Drake a new version of the original Robin costume, and it incorporates elements from some of the later costumes as well. But this shit is awesome. He keeps the collared cape. He keeps the elf booties. He gets rid of the totally impractical briefs with no pants underneath. But he's still, it's not like he's turning anything black. He's not trying to make him look more ninja-like or more badass. Yeah. He's just giving it little tweaks.
The green's a little darker, so it's not quite as bright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still got a I really love that. But no, I really love that. I really, really love that. Yeah, because it's just, he's an impractical character. I mean, if you're just gonna embrace the Batman that would have a Robin, obviously something in the way, man, doesn't need a Robin. I don't think he'd be very good for a Robin. But whatever Batman they do in the so-called real DC universe should have a Robin, because goddamn it, it's time. It's time for them to take that aspect of him serious. You know what I'm saying? Or as seriously as you can take that.
And of course, this version of the Robin that we're looking at from the World's Finest series is written by Mark Waid, and just an absolute dead-on interpretation. The series itself is set in the past, obviously, and so Dick Grayson is still Robin. He's a member of the Teen Titans. Batman and Superman are in their prime. amazing writing in this series from a character level standpoint. I don't know if the plots are going to light your world on fire, but from a character standpoint, one of my favorite interpretations of Robin, and I'm on record of loving Damian Wayne, but just doing great work. Another look at the Dan Mora Robin. I just think this is so brilliant as far as character reinterpretation.
And it really looks like a bird.
Well, like, yeah, the cape looking like bird wings is a great touch as well.
Yeah, I think that adds, again, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, well, this character is based on a bird. Let's do it. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, just
so when I make the swallow, it's going to have a fork-tailed. Okay. Anyways.
But yeah, just to go back to what you were saying, Ed, like the costume goes through many iterations. And I think that this Damian costume that comes out during the Morrison and Quitely Batman and Robin run is about as good as it's going to get for a badass Robin costume.
He's just hard as hell. Look at him, dude. He's got his little shirt on. He's got knee pads and stuff. He's ready to rock, dude. Yeah. And he's got little scallops on his little baby gloves, and he's only got room for 2 of them, so he only gets 2.
You know what I'm saying? And those boots are like for breaking things.
Oh, those are some steel-toed combat boots, baby.
Those are real ass boots.
Yeah, it doesn't have booties. Like, that's a Frank Quitely type of design thing as well.
I like that.
Very real shoes. Those look like ass-kicking shoes.
They do.
Well, and so of course, as long as we're talking about Dick Grayson Dick Grayson Robin, he eventually becomes Dick Grayson Nightwing, who is in here somewhere. There he is. Let's talk a little bit about this costume, Ed. What's your take on the Nightwing costume? Because this is another one that's gone through many different variations over the years, starting, of course, with the great disco collar version from the Titans era.
Gotta be honest, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed that a lot. I don't know what it is, but there's something fun about that.
Yeah. Ladies, you want to come down to my go get in my waterbed? Yeah. that's what this
mama.
Oh, dude. Well, I mean, I think that Nightwing
calf work
has put in so much time with crappy costumes over his years, from his wearing that Robin costume forever to, I mean, come on, man, look at this. I wanted us to kind of acknowledge how far my baby has come. All these girls are drooling over him right now, talking about he's got a fat ass and all this shit. That's great, and that's true. But he's been put through hell as far as costumes. He's been put through hell.
I forgot about those ones.
And that's Norm Brayfogle drawing 3 out of the however many of these are. You know what I'm saying? And it's still
all well drawn, by the way. But
that's the thing. I mean, I think it goes to show, again, we talk about the iterative nature of comics a lot on this channel or this show, and about how like that can sometimes be a boon for creativity. Look no further than Nightwing costume design, because you start with this, which is the most 70s thing you can imagine. And they just keep playing with it all the way up through the 90s, which is where most of this art is from. And they just can't nail it. And then finally, in like the mid 2010s, we get this, which is just this stripped down, super, again, iconographic, high contrast design. I don't know if it passes the silhouette test, but I think maybe even with the Eskrima sticks in the back and the hair. It gives
you an idea.
It's arguable that it could pass that design.
Yeah, I think this is the apotheosis of the suit that was kind of started out in the Scott McDaniel and Chuck Dixon run of Nightwing.
Right.
Like this is kind of the graduation of that suit. They kind of on that suit, they kind of did away with the shorts. It kind of had him have sort of pants, and his boots had a little blue in them. And the main design element was that stripe across the chest that was the blue bird for the Nightwing. And they're always having like it be like sometimes it's a V, sometimes it's a scallop slope. You know what I'm saying? It's just all these different things to different artists. But I like sort of a V, and the Screamer Stick thing. It's just, man, biting off my man Daredevil. But I also love, though, one thing I do love is this particular picture we're looking at is, I guess, Nightwing from, they're doing some jigging in 2021, where basically the artist, I think, was it Bruno?
Bruno Redondo,
Redondo, yeah. He did this thing, or him and the writer tag teamed up on. He swings like he's swinging on the trapeze. That trapeze bar that you swing on in the trapeze. That's how he swings. So a screamer shoots like horizontally from the side of it, and then he grabs the horizontal bar and swings on that. Ooh. Yeah, you got me, you sons of bitches.
Yeah, that's good.
It is good.
That's good.
It's very. You know what I love about this is the gloves.
Yes.
The idea that like the blue stripe that comes down his arm, really recalling the Spider-Man design, if I'm being honest, goes all the way through his fingers. So he's got his index finger and his pinky finger are black, but then the two middle fingers are blue, and then the underside of his hand is blue, but the rest of it is all black. There's something kind of complex, but not so complex that it becomes busy about that design. And it's just interesting to look at, especially when he's doing his whole flippity flip, as Ron would say, thing, because he's also got blue soles on his shoes.
Right.
And so it makes his hands and his feet sort of stand out against the black of his uniform. And so you can contort him in all these really interesting positions, but you never lose track of like where his limbs are because of that choice in the design element.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's why I kind of wanted to pick him, because again, look how far my boy's come. Now you understand my vision. Look how far my boy has come. He's slick as seal snot right now.
Yep. Yeah. From there to there. All right. Well, we've got a few more in here. I'm gonna pick. You know what? Let's go real weird with this one.
Actually, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
I gotta pee.
Okay.
Who is next? Oh, Waverider.
Dude, I fucking love this Waverider design. I've also got just a little manga, Vampire Hunter D, which I think is a really iconic costume.
Oh, nice.
I got Mr. Miracle in here.
Oh, I saw that. It's a little bit down.
Oh, yeah, and then I got Spawn. Yeah, it's alphabetical. And then I've got Spawn just because I wanted to talk about how like the original Todd McFarlane design kind of sucks, and then like the Greg Capullo redesign, like, just is kick ass.
Oh yeah. Well, like, show me the original again, because that's something. There's something. I mean, it's one of those where it's meant to be drawn. Like, this might be the most meant to be drawn costume I've ever seen in my life. And even only meant to be drawn by the person. I think this is like a booby trap or something, man. Like that where Indiana Jones had to grab that bag of sand to put it on the thing to take the idol.
Yeah.
I think it's probably like, hey, you know what, Bob? Just try to draw this costume. You know, it's like, I dare you. And it's just full of traps. And it took somebody brilliant like Capullo to like flip it and bounce it into something that a regular human could draw, but like graduate it as well.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you look at this and it's like, I don't know why the choice of just, he's got like a Green Lantern looking tunic with this red. They give him the red gloves just because, you know, the spikes are there, but it's like they're kind of understated. And then Capullo comes in is like, fuck it, totally asymmetrical, giant gauntlet here, giant foot gauntlet here, spikes everywhere. The skulls look like fucking demon skulls. The chains start becoming like, if anything, I think Capullo made it harder to draw, but it gave it so much more like life and character. Because it looks like a dude in an overwrought superhero costume, whereas this looks like a dude wearing a demon costume, you know?
Yeah, it is interesting though. I mean, it's like, you know, you got to give a chance to grow, man. You know, he was sort of he was very hot topic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he came out very hot topic and he became more emotional.
Look, I'm a 90s kid. You throw chains on some shit, I'm in.
But okay, so Space Ghost I love, but we don't have to talk about Space Ghost. Mr. Miracle, we don't have. Oh, you want to talk about the Punisher, right, Ed?
Oh, just design wise. I mean, look, it's way back in the days. They had all different types of. This is one of the more simple skulls for him. You can see iconic. You know who that is. Look at that one. That next one, Bill. simple, iconic. He has a freaking giant blade, fingerless gloves, like a Beat It extra. He's got those tubules that I don't know what kind of ammo you could put in a straight tube. You just dump bullets down there. I don't know. I'm ignorant. Then he's got the little sketches,
I always thought that those things were flares. Like if he was in a sewer or something, just crack it and there it goes.
But why would you put flares on your chest? So like if somebody shoots you with your flares, then you blow
very
up.
Dangerous. No idea.
It seems very dangerous. But again, this iconic skull. People putting the like two. People used to draw the just one big broken nostril thing. People started putting the little two thing, and like this was the 90s. This is the most extreme era. We're looking at a set of Mark Teixeira drawings of the Punisher where he's got this giant upper body and his iconic skull thing, which you could do all this other stuff around. I just wanted to note that, like, of all the designs, obviously it's so catchy, even the cops think it's cool. Like if you have no taste and you suck ass, even you can see that this is a fresh ass design. You know what I'm saying? And I think I don't know. I think that's what coasted him through the 90s when the story started getting really bad and they started overexposing him. His design was actually up there with superheroes.
Well, there's something to be said for the idea that like his only real costume element is that skull and the color black. But like as long as you maintain those two things, you can dress him up in any number of wild outfits. Like here he's got a sleeveless jacket on with like ninja wraps around his wrists and some combat boots. But it's like that original version of the Punisher was in a straight up black spandex jumpsuit with like white gloves and white boots. And that's still not a bad costume. It's immediately recognizable and kind of anything in between. It's like you can put him in military gear. You can put him in like streetwise detective gear. You can put him in superhero gear. As long as he's got that scowl and that big ass white skull that takes up his entire chest, it's the Punisher.
Yep.
That's why I wanted to put it in there because like it passes. I don't know about the silhouette test, but definitely the like dark alley test.
Oh, for sure. Well, and that's another one of those high contrast designs where it's almost the anti-silhouette, right? Like no matter how dark a scene you put him in, you're gonna draw that skull stark white, and it's gonna stand out of the darkness.
Yep. So absolutely.
I think. All right. I want to get weird.
I gotta say, I don't think the Punisher smokes. I don't know why, but I just feel like it's a thing he wouldn't do. And here's why. Actually, I do know why. Here's why I don't think he would smoke. I think he wouldn't want to smell like anything for when he had to secretly hunt a motherfucker. He wouldn't want anyone to go cigarettes and turn around. I just don't think he would ever do something like that would get in the way of him stabbing a motherfucker in the throat. Just my opinion.
That's a fair point.
Well, this comic is so old that he's smoking like in an airport. So,
all right, I'm gonna get weird with it, guys.
All right,
I absolutely love this design. I am curious to hear what you guys think about it, and that is the '90s sensation from DC Comics. Waverider.
Hey man, he's riding on rainbow waves through time. He was very important. He has like an afro made of energy.
That gets over on me.
Look, this is just dope. Like I don't know if this is iconic costume, but this is incredible.
Well, the negative space on the sides is what really sells it. That part is interesting.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it was designed in such a way, and maybe it's just because most of his appearances were drawn by Dan Jurgens, so it was kept consistent. But the fact that they take that black negative space, which is a really interesting design already, it's somewhere between Spider-Man and like, I don't know, it's an even weirder design than like Spider-Man with those with like the arm stripes. But then they use that negative space to essentially have like time energy pass through him. So he becomes this sort of ghostly figure who rides the waves of time. And the way that interplays with his costume, I just thought was cool as shit. And then also the idea that he's like a gold silver surfer. And yes, they're definitely biting the Silver Surfer motif in more ways than one.
Waverider, come on.
But the fact, again, sucker for high contrast costumes, so the gold on black just hits me right in like my positive design feelings. And the fact that they give him that metallic sheen without having to be as chromed out as Silver Surfer, which is always a little bit hard to draw. And then, up to that freaking head on fire hair. And here's another one, this is the Justice League Unlimited version of him.
I really like that.
Similar to if something works as an action figure, if it works in the Bruce Timm style, it's good. And right here, I think it's good.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I am partial to like we'll talk about her as one of the people in the character design episode, but Frankie Ray as drawn by the Supernova girl that Galactus got to be his herald in like the 80s. She's like has kind of this like hair on fire look and stuff. I've always been partial to that. I think cosmic energy is your hair, fucking binary or whatever you want to call her for the when Captain Marvel became Carol Danvers went out into space. Well, when Carol Danvers went out into super space, it became that weird thing that used to hang out with the Starjammers and shit and come fuck with the X-Men every now and again. She was like, she had a flaming head. I think they called her binary or some other shit. Anyway, she was a big star type of character, like even more cosmic than Captain Marvel, if you could believe it. And she used to fuck with the X-Men and shit like that. But yeah, dude, this reminds me of all those type of flame head designs.
Yep. I think there's just something kind of inherently cool to the way that he was treated throughout the comics. So I wanted to bring him up. Here's another character who you might not think of when it comes to iconic designs, and that is Phoenix. I think the original Phoenix costume is cool, but this white Phoenix costume that's sort of come about in more recent years, again, playing with how they use negative space, similar to Waverider, I think that is kick-ass.
I think it's pretty cool, too. Yeah. It's kind of like the type of thing that like an alien would wear if she wanted to have a sash.
Well, the sash I could take or leave, but I think this works a lot like what I was talking about wanting the Superman suit to work like, where it's like the suit itself almost has this luminescent quality where it's like, even if her face is in shadow, the suit is still kind of glowing. You know what I mean? I think that's...
what's interesting about the sash, though, is that, how we were talking about the symmetry, her hair does what the sash is doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great way to fulfill that function of the superhero cape of like motion and energy and just more to draw without giving her a cape. Like the sash is cool for that reason.
Yep.
Yeah. I found binary, so we'll just throw binary up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, when she got a big flame head, she was like a star that was living. Yeah.
Very cool.
It's pretty hard.
I like this middle Phoenix. That red and the yellow, the contrast in colors. You're right about that.
Well, the middle one, that's Dark Phoenix, baby.
Yeah,
that's
Dark Phoenix.
That's the Dark Phoenix design.
That's probably the one I like the best.
Well, I think the white,
like my heart.
Well, the white and that one have like the really cool. They keep all of them have the same design things, but I just like the symbol of the Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix in the later costume. I love how big it is. It's like bigger than a Superman symbol. It takes up her whole torso.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I mean, either one is more high contrast, right? This one, you're doing the yellow on black, which is super high contrast. It's just appealing to the eye. And then this one, you invert it and you give all the metallic parts way more detail and put them up against this field of sort of negative space white. I just think that anytime you can push the contrast in your costume, it's attractive to the eye.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And as long as we're on the topic, let's talk. I just have one thing to say about Storm. I don't know that any of Storm's costumes are iconic. However, whoever made the choice, and I think it was Dave Cockrum, to pair sort of Central African features with these super high eyebrows and the shock white hair. That is iconic no matter what the hell she's wearing, no matter what the hell her hair is styled like. She remains identifiably Storm through 100 different visual iterations. And I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Storm's thing is it goes into character design too, but like I think all of her costumes for me, I think they used to be so like what the kids now would call disrespectful. Like her ass and belly were out all over the place, and she had a little ring that tied her. She's like a go-go dancer for a while.
Yeah.
And the high ass boots that Art Adams used to draw. You know what I'm saying? And everybody's seen those images of Storm.
Yeah,
So like,
tellingly, I did not choose any of those images to include here. So sorry.
No. But those are like, you know, these are good choices because they represent her in the modern era. But people have seen her before in like, you know, just basically bikinis and shit with thigh-high boots with holes in them and shit from Art Adams drawing them and stuff. So like, all of her modern costumes are so like, I'm wearing a leather like thing up to my neck and a choker above my neck, so you can only see 1 inch of my neck under my jawline. You know what I mean? Like she's so covered up. It's like this, as a response to it. And the cape always has to like, since the back in the days, they've decided that the cape kind of hooks onto these things at our wrists, so the cape doesn't just blow naturally. It's always making sort of a semicircular cloud Moon Knight ass shape behind her because it's connected to her wrists, which I kind of don't get, even though every time I draw her with a cape I do it that way because the law. It's the law.
It's the law.
Looks dope, though. And that's why, you know? I mean, every once in a while something just looks dope, and that looks dope.
Well, it certainly looks I mean, even if you don't necessarily like the look, no other superheroes have that look. And so again, it creates an iconic silhouette that can stay consistent even as you change up all the rest of her costume, which is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. She has her own motif. She'll always have. She likes gloves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she seems to like gloves, and she seems to like just. I love the fact that she's free to do. That's why I don't like her being all covered up. I like a little chest titty hole a little bit, you know, just a little like, look, I am a hot chick and I know all about the powers that hot chicks have, and I'm gonna revel in that, as well as be able to fly and crack the earth in half and cause a hurricane to go up your ass or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think she's this weird chaste or this weird BDSM like all covered up, but like weirdly, I don't buy all that. I think she's a punk. I think she's a black metalhead punk. You know what I'm saying? And I think that it's equal.
Makes a lot of sense.
You know, it's equal covered up and bound and free, and she's complex in how she dresses.
Yeah, she's rebellious.
Well, I mean, yes to all that. And I guess I would just say I love the idea that she really doesn't have a standard costume. Like she'll dress in, like I said, any one of 100 different ways. And just because of some of the character design choices, it's always going to be Storm, no matter what she looks like, which is kind of dope.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah.
All right. So who are the less dregs?
Well, I got to give it up. The great Alex Toth gave us a fantastic character design with Space Ghost.
I agree. I fucking absolutely agree. Man, you should have put some Nexus on here. He looks like BDSM Space Ghost. Just look up Nexus. He looks like BDSM Space Ghost. You'll laugh your ass off.
But look, I mean, in a lot of ways, yes, this is sort of a stripped down Batman design, at least the cowl. Although it's telling that, like, when they made Batman the Animated Series, they essentially just took the Space Ghost cowl and gave it Batman ears. It's like he stripped down, he took the Batman design down to its essence so much that when Batman was making a cartoon, they took his design and applied it to their cartoon. But again, this is a design that takes high contrast and just makes it work beautifully. The yellow cape is such a weird choice. The only other superhero I could think of with a yellow cape, who interestingly also has a white costume, is Mighty Mouse. I guess Robin also, as we talked about. But then the idea that he is a space-based character and they give him an all-white uniform, I think is just genius, because as Alex Ross has shown us, what looks better again? Oh man, that came out small. What looks better against the blackness of space than this stark all-white silhouette, except for the head where you get the white glowing eyes. And so it just is a character that's so well designed relative to his environment.
Well, I love his like gloves with the 3 buttons, because like, yeah, they weren't going to animate more than 3 things per arm, buddy. You better push one of these 3 buttons.
They'll do what we need it to do.
I like his belt too. Honestly, that square.
Yeah,
there's something really cool about just a square. It's not a buckle of any sort. It's just square.
I'm gonna have his little chess piece there.
His head is his symbol. I think it's hilarious. I'll do a little over analysis, but I wouldn't be surprised if Toth was thinking this way. So the big square on the belt mimics the squares on the gauntlets. So again, it's a motif that goes through. And then if you think about it, if you go head to chest symbol to belt, you go circle, triangle, square. And so it's taking these very basic shapes and integrating them into the overall design in a way that I think is just subconsciously pleasing to the eye.
Huh. Nice.
Right?
That makes sense. That does make sense.
And again, there's just something about a white costume and especially a white on black design that invites so many interesting visual interpretations. Like here, where his costume is sort of blending into this huge energy burst, but still his black cowl with the glowing white eye is completely visible, even as the rest of him kind of is subsumed by this blast. It comes down to the character design allowing you to make those interesting visual choices.
Nice. Yeah, I mess with that. That's really cool.
Yeah, man.
Well, Space Ghost, he is his costume in a way that a lot of characters aren't, because I don't know very much Space Ghost mythology at all, but like his iconography has to be there.
I sort of feel about Space Ghost the same way I feel about Captain Britain. Like, I couldn't tell you one thing about the character, but he looks cool as shit. So that counts for a lot. I want to give it up for another Jack Kirby design, Mr. Miracle. Jack Kirby's New Gods are ludicrous to look at, and some designs work better than others. I think this Mr. Miracle design, specifically the Mr. Miracle mask, is gorgeous. And when interpreted by later artists, really becomes something spectacular.
Yeah.
So this is the great J.G. Jones drawing this cover. And this is technically a different version of Mr. Miracle. This is the Shiloh Norman version of Mr. Miracle. But it's very much based on that original Kirby design. And when you blend kind of those bizarre Kirby shapes with that also bizarre but iconic combination of red, yellow, and green, it's just a costume that looks nothing else like you're going to see on the comic book racks.
I love the circle motif too, because he like jumps on discs and stuff. So like there's circles all over.
Yeah.
And that must be some real Kirby shit, because like fucking your boy Thor's got circles too.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the something about like the cosmic characters having this perfect circle on them, a few perfect circles all over them. He must have thought that meant something.
I think that's what I mean. I think that does end up feeling, it's one of those design choices that maybe you can't explain, but whether it's because, the circle is like this perfect shape, or the fact that circles recall suns and planets, whatever it is, you repeat it enough across the costume, and it does give it an otherworldly kind of cosmic feel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you got Power Rangers in there?
I do, baby. Look,
get off on this episode.
I'm sorry. Say what you will. These helmets are the shit. The idea that you can have a helmet that is uniform across characters, but has these design rules using which you can make completely unique character-specific helmet designs is fucking awesome.
That is raw
is
as
cool.
fuck, dude. That mastodon slash what rhino
It's
slash
a mastodon. Right
yeah,
down
no,
to the
I'm saying
trunk, right?
I'm saying,
Oh,
but
and
like
then the Triceratops.
oh,
Triceratops here.
Triceratops, yeah, and then
Pterodactyl here.
Yep.
T-Rex here.
Nice. The pterodactyl's my favorite, honestly.
Yeah.
It's really a sick design.
And they all get different visor shapes, so it's like the parts that they see out of, it's always going to be black, it's always going to take up the full width of the face, but based on their animal motif, totally different shapes. Like you could just cut the visor shapes out of the helmet, and that sort of functions as like a superhero symbol for each one of these Power Rangers.
Oh, yeah.
Ill.
Right?
That is ill.
And they keep that consistent. So like this is, again, our man Dan Mora, who did that great Robin redesign. But this is a bunch of designs from different eras of Power Rangers. But that idea of like their visor is their superhero symbol remains consistent. Like they all have unique visor designs.
That's cool. I never noticed that.
Yeah, man.
Look at you, Bill.
I look, I love talking design, and like some of these less noticed elements are just my favorite. And just the fact that like, because all the uniqueness is in the helmet, like it allows the costumes to be uniform, but like they can all be different colors because they're so uniform. Like there's a cohesiveness. You know what I mean? Like there's a cohesiveness to these Power Rangers designs that like the Fantastic Four wish they had. Like that ability to have a uniform look, but like intense individuality within the uniform. I don't know that you could do it better than the Power Rangers do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is even better than Fight Quietly and them's X uniforms, honestly.
Agreed.
As far as cohesive and uniformity and stuff, it's up there with Jim Lee and them's X-Men uniform, you know.
Yeah.
And even more so because it's like, yeah, they have to do different colors. That shit is ill.
Yeah. Ron, you want to talk to us about Goku for a second?
I actually wanted to do it more for character design, although I got to tell you, if you love Dragon Ball Z, that right there, as take away the colors, everybody knows that's Goku. The hair specifically is Goku's hair. And if you know about Saiyans, their hair, if they're straight Saiyans, their hair stays the same for their whole lives. So
why is what?
Yeah, I don't know why that is. That's just one of the things that they do. If you're full Saiyan, if you're not full Saiyan, your hair changes and grows. If you're half Saiyan, like Trunks and Gohan, their hair can be a variety of different things. But Vegeta and Goku are that. And also, you know, this all means something. Like this symbol here is his first. No, I think the symbol here is his current. There's a symbol on the back that you don't see right now, but the symbol on the back is his first teacher. You know, the bell, it's still a martial arts thing. Within the thing here, like you see these little blue armbands and the little blue thing here and the boots. When he's training, they're all heavy. So in the middle of a fight, sometimes he's still wearing these and he's beating up somebody while wearing his heavy workout clothing. Then he's like, oh, I better take these off because somebody's, you know, giving me a challenge. And then he's that much faster. So, you know, there's these little things in here that if you know about are really fun. But, you know, this is just a very simple one. I had actually meant this for character design.
Well, I mean, look, he passes the silhouette test with flying colors with that hair, you know, and even like the double layered shirts. And I mean, manga is very good about the character silhouettes in the design. And I do love the idea that, I mean, he is essentially wearing like a gi, but it's a very stylized version of the karate gi, and it's specific to him.
Yep.
I love it. And well, another one we're gonna touch on in the character design one. I want to touch on Ghost Rider because it's all he is a character design, but we're gonna touch on him in that. He's this is not costume, this is character design. So
That's fair.
Okay, well,
so,
as in that realm, I have a question for you. Do you think this guy counts for design or for costume? Does he and is it terrible?
I mean, it's definitely more character design than costume design, although, the boots are pretty iconic.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's like. I had thought about including Lobo, and like I decided against it. I don't know how I feel about Lobo as like a character design.
Well, I have a hard time with it too, because I'm wondering if this is just one of those things where I laughed a whole bunch while reading Lobo comics and was like, I think he's cool because of that. There's one. We got a cross
well, I
on him
mean,
for some reason.
yeah, I kind of think it is more character design than costume design because all of his costume has to work with how he is physically. So
Yeah.
it's like I think it's part and parcel. I think the best of his comics are the ones where Simon Bisley draws them because he got drawn before Simon Bisley drew him. He looked
Yeah.
like Terrax the Tamer or something with like if Terrax the Tamer joined fucking ACDC or those Ace of Spades guys, whatever, you know what I'm saying? If they joined one of those bands, that's what they would look like. You know what I mean? It just but when Simon Bisley drew it, it's just like I don't know. It's like yeah,
It does
Motorhead.
have
He actually started looking like Motorhead for real when
Yeah.
Simon Bisley drew it. You know what I'm saying?
That's kind of
So,
amazing.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple different characters in here that would probably work better as character design discussions. I will just bring up, I think the modern iteration of Dr. Fate is super cool.
Yeah.
The
no
helmet,
argument.
the helmet goes all the way back to the Golden Age. Obviously, the rest of the Golden Age costume is a little bit goofy.
Look at that fucking collar. Look at that fucking collar.
I mean,
this
is
his vajummy down there.
This is like the extreme version of extending the trunks so that they don't look like a bikini. This is like a straight up men's diaper. I don't know what that is.
Well, that looks like a one piece that got bisected.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Some kind of
Not
way.
to be rude, but this legitimately looks like I drew it.
Well, look, again, if you could do that
for
and feed your family every day, there's more perspective than any drawing I've ever seen you
There's
do.
a bazillion times more perspective. And you can see the helmet looks like it's a real helmet, unlike whatever I would draw would not look like a helmet.
Get some fucking perspective, Ron.
Yeah.
And I think the helmet is a huge part of this for me.
It's
like
dope.
I said, I'm such a sucker for helmet design. And like this is where that Ray helmet design that I was on about comes from. Yeah. I think this is one of the most iconic designs in comics. The helmet of Naboo. But once they really got a handle on who this character was and started updating him for the modern day, like I think it's a super dope costume. The blue and yellow combination I think is very unique. Anytime you could really work like big field. Here's another yellow cape. Actually, maybe I'm just a yellow cape guy. Maybe. But anytime you can work like fields of yellow into a design and make it work, I think Wolverine's probably another one. You've got a good character design on your hands because a field of yellow should be very off-putting. Like it's just too bright, too clashy of a color. So making it work, I think, is a huge accomplishment. So yeah, just big props to modern interpretations of Dr. Fate.
All right, well, I'll suggest a dismount for us.
Please.
You could do that the Harley Quinn stuff because I think one of the reasons why you put this on here is because she had one of the most iconic costumes ever, and they just threw it out the fucking window for it to look like a fucking
schizophrenic hunker,
a schizophrenic lot lizard.
Yeah,
at some kind of goddamn what's the shit the Loves down at the Loves truck stop, some schizophrenic lot lizard, and she had an iconic pixie like weird, and I don't mean pixie dream girl because I don't know who the fuck dreams of this girl. She was dangerous and like a nightmarish vision of some cute girl to come menace you, and she always had fealty to this fucked up clown. So if you saw her in the night coming to your apartment, it wasn't going to be a good for you. She was a harbinger of doom. There was something fresh about that,
dude.
man.
I completely agree. I mean, the red and black color scheme, the epitome of the dangerous color scheme. The fact that they've got like these sharp graphic elements that recall both, playing cards, but also especially the red ones, like drops of blood or something kind of sharp. And then the fact that it's like the Joker looks literally like a clown. So his sidekick looks literally like a Jack in the Box character. Makes perfect sense. And then, incorporating the white face with the white collar with these ruffled white elements on the wrists. It's again just one of those things that, like, as she's spinning and flipping and doing whatever, you can really keep track of her movement in space because they give you those white keys to focus on. And it's high contrast, which again is a huge part in my book. Bruce Timm is a master character designer. I think this is one of his all-time great designs. I mean, there you can see a selection of Bruce Timm Harley drawings. Like this is, and those Harlequin doohickeys on her head, I don't even know what you'd call them, can look like demon horns in the right circumstance.
Yeah, they're like what they used to wear in, like, who's the king? Who could make fun of the king?
The jester.
Jesters.
The jester. It's the jester look. And it's also funny because it's the Joker and a jester on top of that,
of course,
as well.
Yeah, I mean it's the whole point, and this is so good.
It's like so good.
And if you decided to like bisect the costume in different ways, maybe have a top half be one color and another, you could do so many things mixing it up besides just doing this over and over again. If people started getting tired of it, that's great. But like, this look is awesome. There's 100 different ways to do this and update this. Have that be like a hoodie thing or something, whatever type of ways you can make. You know what I mean? They could have updated without destroying it, is what I'm saying.
Well, and I just want to point out that, like, you can draw this in the simplest, most sort of iconic Bruce Timm style, all the way up to Alex Ross's photorealistic style, and it doesn't lose a beat. Like, it still does all those things we just talked about. It's both pixie-ish and menacing, somewhere between being a Jack in the Box and a demon. Like, it is just a fucking great design. And I don't have her current modern look, but like, to discard it for just the most sort of generic punk look, it bothers me a lot.
Like if Tank Girl sucked.
Yeah.
She looks like if Tank Girl sucked. That's what she looks like right now a lot of the time.
Although I will say that in the cartoon, it's one of those things where, like, maybe for the cartoon it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad, and like, I get that cartoon makes a story point out of, like, well, this costume is tied to the Joker and her old life, so she needs to get as far away from it as possible, and so that's why she's got the new look. That's about as well as you can treat that if you're going to do it. All I'm saying is I miss the days when the Joker had a henchwoman that looked like a demonic jester. And
yeah,
well,
100%.
And I think we all miss those days when we had a demonic jester at our side. But the best thing to assuage those feelings is to jump on our motherfucking Patreon. We'll get you through those rough times, just like Harley Quinn's lovingly strokes got our buddy through all his tough times. I do believe that our Patreon is super fresh. It's patreon.com/the greatest pod. I think it's a great thing for people to invest in. And I think people leaving us 5-star reviews would be really fucking awesome. It's a great way to communicate with us too and get on our programming by sending us a 5-star review and then asking us a question, and then we'll answer it on air. It's a great pipeline to talk to us, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're always welcome to send us an email at thegreatestpod@gmail.com. Maybe you have a couple of characters that we missed. If you send us an email, maybe we'll talk about them on the Patreon. So you join the Patreon, listen to the extra characters we'll talk about, that sort of thing. And another important thing is we are all doing our own stuff. I have an album that's out. I would love for you guys to either buy it or stream it. Streaming it is super easy. You just look at a Ron Swallow on the Wing of a Dragon anywhere that you get stuff at, that you stream at. You can listen to it on there. You can listen on YouTube as well. If you want to buy it, you can go to Amazon or iTunes and get it. And I will have links in the show notes.
Yay, Christmas. So, thank you guys for listening to a well-coiffed, wonderfully costumed episode of The Greatest Motherfucking Pod.
Yeah, I like adding motherfucker into that. That's what I'm talking about.